He was a once-in-a-generation genius, pushing the fusion of martial arts and mecha to the absolute limit. Yet in the end, only half of his skull remained. Ambushed by thousands of interstellar warships deep in space, he was all but destroyed. As a perfect blend of man and machine, he tore through enemy lines like a god of war. Even when surrounded by concentrated fire, he deflected every blast with nothing but a wooden staff. Not even colossal warships could withstand a single strike from his blade. But just when victory was within reach, the enemy unleashed a force beyond his comprehension. A power so overwhelming, it broke through even his defenses. In the next instant, crack, his mech began to shatter. When he opened his eyes again, 200 years had passed. His name was Xiang Shan, and at this moment, he had no idea that only half of his skull remained. It wasn't until an old man and a kid told him the truth that he finally understood. But that wasn't even the worst part. He couldn't remember anything, couldn't think, and even basic communication had become nearly impossible. The real problem was that the support systems on the side of his bio-brain were completely fried, leaving the old man utterly stunned. He quickly turned to the boy beside him and asked, "Where the hell did you dig up this thing?" As it turned out, the kid had been scavenging the battlefield scrapyard like he always did. But this time, he discovered a new soft tissue zone buried deep beneath the wreckage. And that's where he found Xiang Shan, barely clinging to life. When he noticed the man's eyeball still moving ever so slightly, he jumped with joy on the spot and swore to fix this broken guy and make him his brand new dad. Turns out, the boy had grown up without a father, and to fill that void, he'd already adopted several dads over the years. This time, he was determined not to be mocked by the other kids again, so he brought Xiang Shan home. The old man with a glass dome over his brain was the mayor of the scrapyard town, and the boy's name was Yuki. They lived in the ruins of a biochemical war era, a wasteland where everyone survived by scavenging trash. And if there was nothing left to scavenge, then people simply sold parts of their own bodies. Over time, the entire town became a grotesque shadow of humanity. To make things easier, the mayor casually gave Xiang Shan a new name, Yorg. But the moment he heard it, Xiang Shan felt something was off. The name stirred something in his memory. He knew it meant something, but it definitely wasn't his. As he passed out again, Yuki rushed to his side and shouted, "Dad." Xiang Shan was completely baffled. "Wait, I have a son." The mayor chuckled and stepped in to explain the situation. Just then, a mechanical click echoed as a surveillance camera suddenly extended from a corner. It scolded Yuki furiously for dragging home a dead man's head. Yuki lowered his voice and mumbled, "Sorry, Mom." That one word, "Mom," left Xiang Shan utterly dumbfounded. Did he just call a camera Mom? But that wasn't her actual body. Her true form was a heavily modified, beat-up old truck. Her name was Yulia. To feed her 7 kids, she had sold off her cerebellum and brainstem, converting herself into a 100-ton construction machine. Even so, she couldn't protect them all, for had died from illness, and one had been taken away as a so-called gene tax. Hearing the mayor explain all this, Xiang Shan felt a surge of indescribable emotion, grief, disbelief, perhaps even guilt. In his memory, humanity was never supposed to end up like this. The mayor seemed to sense his thoughts and interrupted calmly. "Forget Yulia. You're the real anomaly here. This scrapyard was unearthed 50 years ago, and the biowar happened even earlier. No living brain cell should have survived this long." Seeing Xiang Shan's current state, the mayor realized there was no way he could get any clear answers from him. So he pulled out an old CPU from the 2050s and slotted it straight into Xiang Shan's skull. As the system began to slowly update and initialize, BZZZT, his vision finally started to sharpen and stabilize. Bits and pieces of his memories began to flicker back into his mind. He still couldn't recall everything, but one thing he was absolutely certain of: the name Yor belonged to his sworn enemy. The next morning, Yuki brought him a basic prosthetic body with a pair of mechanical arms. With hands of his own again, Xiang Shan could finally move around on his own. So he followed Yuki to the outskirts of town, to the foot of a strange tree known as the copper sugar tree. As the name suggested, this tree oozed a liquid resembling copper lace syrup, one of the most vital resources for the junkyard town survival. Every day, designated workers came to harvest the copper syrup from the tree. Shockingly, it served as the main food source for the people of this era. Without thinking too much, Xiangshan took a sip straight from the ladle. But the moment it touched his tongue, he knew something was seriously wrong. How could any human possibly drink something like liquid copper? On top of that, all the trees were gray? Was he losing his mind? Or had the entire world already gone mad? What kind of evolution could twist reality into this? What the hell happened to this world? Just then, Yuki interrupted his thoughts. He tugged on Xiangshan's arm and led him toward a towering mountain of trash in the distance. Yuki started by strapping a dented kettle to Xiangshan's cracked skull as makeshift head armor. Then he dug up a bunch of junkyard parts, prepping to assemble a crude, prosthetic body. Watching the transformation, Yuki practically sparkled with excitement. Going from half a head to a full mech body? That was seriously cool. Xiangshan, on the other hand, wasn't having it. Seriously? A freaking teapot on my head? Still, having hands again made life a lot easier. At least now, he could tweak the prosthetics himself. The arm was old and a bit clunky, sure, but it was better than nothing. His eyes, though, those are premium gear. Not only could they autofocus perfectly, but the zoom range was downright ridiculous. With just a bit of adjustment, he could clearly see objects miles away. But before he could finish admiring his ultravision, a sudden shock wave slammed into him, sending him flying. As he turned and squinted, he saw it clearly. It was Enoch. Enoch shrugged with mock indifference. "You're just too small. I didn't even notice you." But when he saw Xiangshan's patched-up body, he burst into mocking laughter. Xiangshan narrowed his eyes. "So what? You got a crush on Yulia. What's that got to do with me?" Hearing that name made Enoch explode. "You junkyard reject don't even deserve to say her name." With that, he lunged forward again, ready to attack. But Xiangshan was already running calculations in his head. If he dove into the tire stack 1 second before impact, Enoch wouldn't have enough time to turn. Then, if he grabbed the rotating shaft and used vibration torque to loosen the main bolts, Enoch would collapse like a pile of spare parts. Damn, I really am a genius. But just as he was preparing to move, a blueprint suddenly lit up in his vision. Enoch's entire structural layout appeared before his eyes. Enoch saw him frozen in place and smirked. If it weren't for the Dyson rule banning murder, you'd already be a pile of scrap metal. With one final taunt, Enoch spun around and disappeared in a cloud of dust. All that remained for poor Xiangshan was a thick blast of engine fumes to the face. Staring after him, Xiangshan mumbled, "The Dyson rule. What even is that? And who made it? More importantly, who's really in control of this world? And the gene tax the mayor mentioned, who's collecting that?" Yuki didn't seem too interested. Whoever made those rules is probably way above our pay grade. But hey, I'm more curious about you. Don't tell me you're one of those Paralympic champions. Xiangshan blinked in confusion. Paralympics? In this era, the so-called Paralympics had evolved into a global gladiator tournament, where cyber-enhanced warriors clashed for glory in the biggest sporting event of the age. Xiangshan was totally lost, overwhelmed by the sheer amount of information being thrown at him. In Xiangshan's fragmented memories, true martial arts wasn't just about flashy moves. It hinged on mastering powerful internal energy techniques. Yuki's eyes lit up. Then maybe you used to be a Shaka. In this world, Shaka referred to one of the most feared militant factions. They worshipped a dark deity named MOD and took inspiration from a long-dead rebel named Aaron Swartz, seeking to destroy civilization and rebuild it in their own twisted image. Xiangshan frowned. Based on the fragments in my head, I might have been one of them. Yuki didn't push for answers. Well, whoever you were, let's focus on getting you some decent parts for your lower half. You're hands down the most pitiful bot I've ever seen. Only half a head's original, the rest all cobbled together from junkyard trash. Even Yuki and the mayor stood in silence, staring at his shaky, makeshift frame. Ugly and useless. And who the heck uses solid steel rods for joints? The thing looks like it'll snap just from sneezing. But Xiangshan didn't seem to mind at all. He started moving his new limbs, every motion creaking with metallic groans. And he actually looked kind of proud. The mayor looked at Xiangshan and immediately panicked. Don't tell me he's about to go rogue on us. But Xiangshan simply raised his head and gave them a polite, if not incredibly awkward smile. Yuki blinked. Yes, something's definitely not right with your wiring. The mayor finally let out a sigh of relief. At least we got your body patched up before the tax officers arrive. Every settlement is required to hand over newborns annually as part of the so-called gene tax, a system meant to preserve the human genome. If a town fails to pay up, they're stripped of government protection, left to fend for themselves. And when that happens, the Shaka, those violence-worshipping maniacs, swoop in and turn the town into a bloodbath. Xiangshan was stunned. Isn't that just straight-up extortion? Glancing down at his ragtag body, he clenched his fists. No matter what, he couldn't let this town suffer because of him. As that thought crossed his mind, 3 aircrafts thundered into view above them, casting long shadows across the town below. Rows of snow-white robots descended from the aircraft, each equipped with overhead surveillance units and armed to the teeth. Moments later, a towering man in military uniform strode forward, a vicious-looking dog on a leash by his side. The mayor quickly stepped up with a forced smile. This was clearly the man's first time visiting the town. But the moment their eyes met, the mayor felt an overwhelming pressure that nearly crushed his breath. His legs buckled, and he dropped to his knees with a thud. One of the man's attendants barked. Is this how you vermin welcome a sub-citizen officer? Terrified, the townspeople immediately fell to their knees, faces pale and trembling. The man stood motionless, gazing down at the crowd with detached disdain, as if he were observing a pit of diseased lab rats. Then, cutting through the tense silence, came the sudden wail of a crying child. The boy's father panicked, scrambling to cover his mouth while dropping to his knees, stammering an apology. But it was too late. The man's boot had already lifted off the ground. He didn't stomp. Instead, he gently placed his foot on top of the crying baby's head. Relax. Why would I kill my tax revenue? He sneered. But the nightmare wasn't over. Glancing at the datapad in his attendant's hands, his tone grew cold. Your village's death rate seems unusually high. Could it be tax evasion? Without another word, he pulled out a sleek handgun. Bang, bang, bang. A burst of gunfire rang out. Bullets flew in a perfect circle around the mayor, neatly framing him as the epicenter. The man spoke calmly, as if delivering a weather report. Today, every one of you, if just one person can last 5 minutes against my dog in combat, I'll approve your population count. The mayor trembled. This wasn't negotiation, it was theatrical cruelty. The attendant's control pad glowed ominously red. As he activated the combat mode, he casually reminded the dog, try not to kill too many this time. At that moment, a towering, heavily built cyborg stepped into the circle. The battle between man and beast was about to begin. One of the scrapyard's larger workers stepped forward without hesitation, volunteering to fight. But he clearly underestimated the creature before him. As the fight began, the worker raised both arms, his fists humming as they charged with kinetic energy. With a roar, he charged straight at the dog. But any creature chosen for a trial like this was no ordinary mutt. In a flash, the dog leapt high into the air, landing squarely on the worker's arm. Then it began darting between his limbs at blinding speed, moving so fast it was nearly impossible to track. Watching from the sidelines, Xiangshan narrowed his eyes, instantly sensing something was off. Of course, he muttered, that's no regular beast. Back in the old days, humans were obsessed with biomechanical fusion, turning animals into lethal living weapons. Due to their small size and incredible speed, these biomechanical dogs inspired the creation of a specialized martial art, Bionic Fist. While the crowd was still gasping, the dog had already clamped its jaws around the worker's artificial blood vessel. With a savage tug, the tubing tore free from the prosthetic limb, causing the man to collapse unconscious. The defeat itself wasn't all that surprising, but when everyone looked at the timer, they were stunned to see that only 5 seconds had passed. The mayor tried to brush it off. It's fine. Artificial organs can be repaired. But who's up next? He turned to another burly man nearby. Desley, you're in. Amid reluctant cheers and peer pressure, Desley forced himself to step into the ring. Meanwhile, Xiangshan's expression had grown grim. This dog wasn't just fast. It had to contain a fully functional human brain. And not just any brain, a martial artist's. No one else could execute Bionic Fist with that level of precision and brutality. But before Xiangshan could finish his thoughts, Desley's blood tubes were already being ripped out by the dog. The timer? Another 5 seconds, exactly the same. No matter who stepped into the ring, the outcome never changed. 5 seconds. The mayor's face had gone pale. Even if all of us go in, we still won't last 5 minutes. Yuki stared at the beast in awe. So this is what real martial arts looks like. But Xiangshan roared, his voice shaking the air. This isn't martial arts at all. The martial arts he remembered, true martial arts, were never tools of oppression. They were born of resistance. A way for the weak to stand tall against tyrants, not to crush the helpless. As more and more workers fell, blood splattering across rusted metal, Xiangshan began to walk forward, one heavy step after another. Yuki rushed behind him, grabbing his arm in panic. You can't. That broken body of yours will fall apart the moment you fight. But Xiangshan shrugged him off like a ghost possessed, his pace unwavering, his eyes locked on the beast ahead. But just when everyone expected a heroic entrance, Xiangshan suddenly collapsed to his knees with a loud thud. Turns out, he hadn't volunteered. Someone had shoved him into the ring. From the sidelines, the tax officer stared at his mismatched prosthetics and muttered, "What is this performance art?" But under the weight of 100 stares, Xiangshan slowly rose to his feet. This feeling, this burning sensation in his chest, it felt strangely familiar. Memories from a past life began to surface. Only through combat could he bridge who he was with who he used to be. He exhaled and stepped forward. If it's a fight you want, then come. He knew damn well, with this wreck of a body, defeating that bionic hellhound was a fantasy. His eyes scanned the ground, then locked onto a fallen stun baton. That's my only shot. The dog, meanwhile, didn't even see him as a threat. With a savage snarl, it lunged straight for his throat, teeth bared, eyes locked on the kill. Just when everyone thought Yor was done for, the dog sank its teeth right into his exposed battery pack. But it turns out, being broken had its perks. The battery sparked violently, surging with raw voltage. In that split second, Xiangshan slammed his fist forward, sending the dog flying. He quickly realized this wasn't some mindless mutt. It had gone straight for his power source. It was aiming to end the fight in one bite. But before he could think more, that long-lost fire surged through his veins. This feeling. I've missed it. The dog recovered and lunged again, a blur of metal and fury. Xiangshan's left arm shot up and crashed down like a hammer. Thud! The beast hit the ground hard, limbs flailing, knocked flat on its back. Everyone watching froze. No one expected that pile of junk to hit like a war machine. Xiangshan didn't waste a second. His eyes locked onto the fallen stun baton. He reached for it, ready to finish this. But the dog quickly adapted, latching onto Xiangshan's left leg with its jaws and yanking backward with brutal force. Yet all it managed to do was slow him down. His prosthetic body couldn't even register pain. All external martial arts techniques, including Bionic Fist, had to obey Newtonian physics. According to its logic, disabling an opponent's legs came first. Xiangshan stomped forward with his right leg, regaining balance instantly. Based on the dog's shoulder height, no matter how strong it was, it couldn't destabilize a full-grown cyborg stance in a single tug. But then, in a sudden shift, the dog released his left leg and lunged straight at the right one. Xiangshan seized the moment. His right foot surged forward, aiming a brutal kick at the beast's exposed underbelly. But just as the strike was about to land, the dog defied all expectations. Its front limbs had been reinforced with weighted modules. Using the extra momentum, it dodged the attack, then launched into a rapid backflip, and cleanly tore Xiangshan's head clean off. The tax officer froze, blinking. What the? This junk pile fights like a martial artist. but I don't sense any internal energy. Could it be the corpse of a dead external style master? The Dyson rule strictly forbids the killing of human beings, but the loophole? As long as the biological brain remains intact, everything else is fair game. In the blink of an eye, the man and the dog had already completed another brutal exchange. The dog narrowed its eyes. This pile of junk, it's reading my moves? But Xiang Shan didn't hesitate. He launched into a spinning sweep kick. It wasn't fast, but the timing was flawless. The dog was struck cleanly and sent soaring into the air. Seizing the moment, Xiang Shan dove down to grab the stun baton, but the force snapped his right prosthetic leg with a sickening crack. The dog landed and stood tall, eyeing him coldly. Didn't expect some backwater hick to put up a fight. As it spoke, its jaws slowly opened. From within emerged a steel helmet, sliding outward piece by piece. When the entire unit had been revealed, the crowd gasped in horror. It wasn't just a combat dog. There was a human martial artist housed inside. Xiang Shan froze, completely dumbfounded. A wave of nausea hit him, but then he remembered he didn't have a stomach anymore. The man burst into wild laughter, voice booming like thunder. "Tell me your name." Xiang Shan paused for a moment, then muttered calmly, "My name is Xiang Shan. The mountain no one crosses." Well, didn't give him time for dramatic pauses. His rear-mounted thrusters ignited with a rising hiss. Xiang Shan squared his stance, eyes locked forward. "I'm a world-renowned martial artist." In the blink of an eye, Will launched forward like a missile, rocketing toward him. His front paw slammed down, aiming straight for the exposed battery on Xiang Shan's chest. At the same time, his jaws clamped down on the cyborg's arm. But he didn't notice the stun baton that had already been slipped under his thruster nozzle. A surge of electricity exploded through his body in a violent, crackling blast. And then, boom, a deafening explosion rocked the arena as the thruster detonated in a burst of fire and smoke. The explosion's shockwave blasted Will straight into the air, sending him crashing into the ground like a broken machine. Xiang Shan's battery, overwhelmed by the surge, fell from his chest and clattered to the floor. Paralyzed, he whispered through the static in his voice modulator, the title Xiang Shan of the Southern Peak. "I fought with my life to earn it." Will lay twitching on the ground. No longer a threat, just a burned-out husk of what used to be a killing machine. The tax officer checked the timer in silence. Technically, the 5-minute challenge wasn't over, but the dog was clearly finished. He stepped forward slowly, and to everyone's shock, gently reconnected the battery into Xiang Shan's chest port. Xiang Shan stared at him, overwhelmed. It had been so long since he felt this victory. He wanted to cry, to scream, to let out the storm in his chest. But this body had no tear ducts, no vocal processor advanced enough to simulate sobbing. Even now, the hand he raised felt nothing. No warmth, no touch. The living, breathing body he once had was gone. What good was a brain without a soul to carry it? Xiang Shan pounded his metal torso with trembling fists, trying to vent the fury and despair boiling inside him. His mind flashed back to that battle, the battle he lost. It was my failure that doomed the world to become this. He clutched his head, curling into himself, repeating the same 3 words. "I lost. I lost." He lifted his gaze toward the world around him, to the humans with steel limbs instead of flesh, to the monstrous tax officer who could end lives with a word, and to the proud martial artist who had become nothing more than a hound in a cage. The tax officer strolled forward, amused by the sight. "You won the fight, yet look like you're about to cry. Pathetic." He had originally considered recruiting Xiang Shan, but now he wasn't so sure this broken man deserved the offer. Without a word, the tax officer walked over to Will's broken form, pulled out the stun baton, and casually plunged it into his core, executing him on the spot. Then he turned to the mayor. "This year, we'll take 18 newborns as tax." The mayor blinked in confusion. 18? There were supposed to be 19. But with his lowly status, he dared not ask. He just stood there, stiff, afraid to breathe too loudly. Once the tax officer and his team departed, silence fell like a heavy curtain. The mayor stared at what remained of Will, a genuine martial artist corpse, discarded like trash. Xiangshan finally stirred. He stepped forward, lifted the body onto his shoulder, and began walking through the crowd without a word. But he hadn't gone far before some greedy eyes gleamed. People tried to snatch away his spoils. Only this time, Xiangshan didn't flinch. He didn't hesitate. He had faced down that dog, and something inside him had changed. Even Yuki could feel it. He muttered under his breath. Did he remember something? Xiangshan motioned for Yuki to come closer, his voice low and serious. What I'm about to say, if word gets out, it won't just bring disaster to me and my mother. The entire town could be in danger. Yuki leaned in, eyes wide with anticipation. But just as he was about to speak, Xiangshan hesitated. Forget it. I won't say anything. Yuki practically jumped in frustration. You can't just stop mid-sentence like that. That's torture. He chased after him, guessing wildly. Wait, did you remember you were some big shot? Or maybe you remembered an enemy, right? Am I close? Seeing how curious Yuki was, Xiangshan sighed and gave in just a little. Tell me, have you ever heard the name Xiangshan? To his surprise, Yuki simply shook his head. Nope, doesn't ring a bell. Xiangshan blinked in disbelief. What? That name was given to me by my grandfather himself. It was supposed to shake the world. He muttered to himself, his voice faint. Has the age of awe already passed? Just how long have I been asleep? Still clinging to hope, Xiangshan pressed on. What about similar names? Something like the mountain no one crosses? Yuki shook his head again. Nope, nothing like that. That answer hit Xiangshan like a hammer. I used to be famous. The whole world knew who I was. Yuki looked at him skeptically. What? Were you like a Paralympic champion or something? Xiangshan let out a bitter laugh. I don't know. I really don't remember anything. My declarative memory must have been offloaded somewhere. All I remember is my name and his. Suddenly, he grabbed Yuki's shoulders. Do you remember the name I shouted when I first woke up? Yurjimov? Yuki furrowed his brow, thinking hard. Yeah, you did say that name when you first woke up. But from the look on Xiangshan's face, that wasn't the answer he wanted. He muttered to himself. So even he's gone? Have I really been asleep for thousands of years? I can't even remember who I was. Finally, he turned to Yuki and asked, Hey, what year is it right now? Yuki blinked. This year? It's 209. Yuki explained, there was a war during the Third Era. They called it the Ascension War. Xiangshan's eyes widened. That war. So I've really been asleep for 200 years. And if I'm still alive, then the real Yorg must be 2. I have to uncover the truth. That night, Yuki brought Xiangshan to visit a local doctor named Schultz. Xiangshan hoped to upgrade to a more functional combat-ready prosthetic body, but he lacked the parts. Dr. Schultz frowned. I've got some high-grade components, yes, but nothing comes free. Xiangshan nodded, understanding the hesitation. Then he reached into his bag and pulled something out. It was a segment of spine, salvaged from the dog he had defeated. The truth was that dog had once been human, until it was modified with injected viral strands and fused with advanced gene-binding tech. Beings like that were known as Cyberians. Just like what happened to Yuki's mother, she ended up that way because she sold her spine. Are you seriously thinking of selling it? Yuki asked softly. You're not going to use it for yourself? There's no medicine, Xiangshan sighed. You know, the stuff they use when replacing a spine. What was it called again? The doctor raised an eyebrow. You mean reverse Fourier soak? Xiangshan snapped his fingers. That's the one. So it's still called that in this era. But the drug wasn't the only thing he needed. He also required a ton of compatible parts. The doctor frowned. Those components you mentioned, way too ancient. Try checking the scrap pile at the parts yard. Or maybe look up some blueprints online. Xiangshan stared at him, stunned. Wait, the internet. That died out during the war. You're telling me this wrecked world still has net access? Though clearly intrigued, he eventually declined. Forget it. Private network fees are a ripoff. After Xiangshan left, the doctor crept into a hidden room and whispered into a transmitter. Mission failed. Xiangshan refused to go online, no matter what I said. On the other end of the line, the mayor appeared on screen. His tone was grave. Violation of Dyson Principle, Article 3. Collusion between a Shaka and an outsider is punishable by death. That Sean, there's no doubt he's one of them. In his youth, the mayor had offended a powerful official and was forced into exile. The doctor knew the surface story, but the truth? That official had been assassinated by a shaka the mayor himself had summoned. It was a lesson passed down from his father. Zayaks are easy to manipulate. Just show them deference, and they'll never raise a hand against you. That principle became the cornerstone of the mayor's survival philosophy. He had hoped to keep it buried forever. But this time, the tax officer only took 18 babies below the quota. That could mean the forest rebels, the outlawed shaka clans, were watching. And Xiangshan's refusal to go online? That behavior mirrored the shaka perfectly. They never connected to networks because the moment they did, their true identities would be exposed. After witnessing Mr. Shan's explosive strength during the dogfight, especially after acquiring the martial artist's cybernetic body, the mayor finally came to a realization. If we want this town to survive, we may have no choice but to rely on a shaka. Meanwhile, Xiangshan and Yuki arrived at the town's abandoned parts depot. As they scavenged through piles of scrap, their conversation naturally circled back to the battle that day. Xiangshan admitted, "Honestly, I didn't plan to step up. Someone pushed me out there, which means someone was trying to get me killed." Yuki was stunned. He'd been there, but hadn't seen anything suspicious. Realizing time was short, Xiangshan suggested, "You should head back. I'll handle this alone." But Yuki shook his head without hesitation. "You saved my life. Today, I'm coming with you." Together, they climbed to the highest peak closest to the moon, wind whipping around them. Something dangerous was brewing in the silence. Xiangshan stared at the strange scar across the moon's surface, his mind swirling with doubt. Have I really slept for 200 years? Or did I somehow cross into a parallel world? Without another word, he led Yuki to a grand, rust-covered ruin. What looked like a pile of scrap was actually a marvel of ancient design, the legendary Turing machine. Pointing at the wreckage, Xiangshan explained, the Turing machine was the first computer born at the dawn of civilization. It wasn't just the start of technology, it was the true origin of all inner force. External martial arts came from battlefield tactics, but inner force, that's the fusion of intelligence and will. Every internal technique is essentially a form of computation, and all computation traces back to this structure. Yuki was stunned, though still confused. Wait, what does a computer have to do with fighting? Xiangshan smiled. A computer can run billions of simulations in a blink. The true masters use that power through their own bodies. He kept going, explaining concept after concept. Yuki couldn't keep up, but he could feel it. Something ancient and powerful was waking up. Xiangshan went on. The human brain is intuitive. It struggles to model complex computation. But machines? They were made for it. That's the essence of inner force. When your will can command a Turing machine, no one can steal your data or hijack your thoughts. Train your fists without training your core, and all you'll ever be is someone else's tool. Yuki still looked completely lost. Xiangshan broke it down. If you only focus on external techniques and ignore inner cultivation, you're basically walking around naked in the data world. Anyone could rip your memories or steal your combat instincts. Even the strongest fighter is nothing more than a puppet, unless they master inner power. Only then can you own yourself. This is your first lesson. Someday, when you're trapped in an illusion, this might be the only thing that saves you. With that, Xiangshan guided Yuki's hands over the machine's controls. The gears let out a loud clunk-clunk, then suddenly jammed with a sharp metallic screech. Yuki jumped back in fright, nearly yanking his hand away. But Xiangshan reassured him, this is good. It means the world is still real, the machine still works, and we're not just ghosts inside some simulation. This phenomenon is called a Turing halt, the sword that cuts through illusion. Yuki raised his hand, confused. What's a Turing halt? Xiangshan explained. It's the idea of whether one Turing machine can determine if another will ever stop. That jam just now? It proves we're not inside a simulated computation. That little glitch was the strongest denial of a false reality. In that moment, Xiangshan was certain. He wasn't just a brain in a vat. The texture of the world became vivid again. He could even feel the seed of inner power beginning to take root within him. Gently, he patted Yuki on the head. Thank the stars we're real. But then his tone turned serious. To walk the path of a true warrior, understanding the Turing machine isn't enough. You must envision it, reshape its ancient logic in your mind, and wield it with your will. What they needed wasn't just rusted machinery. If they grasped the blueprint behind it, they could build the core of their inner strength. Xiangshan had explained a lot, but it was clear Yuki hadn't understood most of it. The night had fallen, it was time to head back. But Yuki wasn't ready to let go. He grabbed Xiangshan's arm. Wait, can we talk more about the path of the warrior? Xiangshan replied calmly. What I just taught you could last a lifetime. Yuki may not have learned any techniques, but one thing he now knew for sure. This man wasn't just Xiangshan. He was a true Xia. Xiangshan turned to leave. Yuki hesitated for a long moment, then suddenly shouted, I want to be a Xia, too. They look so cool and so powerful. Xiangshan sighed, half amused. Cool, that's just flair. Real Xia get beat up more than you think. But Yuki didn't flinch. I don't care. If I become strong, I can make life better for me and my mom. Even so, Xiangshan wasn't moved. He patted the kid's shoulder. Forget it, kid. Go home and get some sleep. Being a Xia isn't as noble as it sounds. There are plenty among them who are disloyal, heartless, or selfish. And once you become one, you'll carry a stain in the eyes of the authorities for life. But Yuki didn't care. He plugged his ears and shouted, I don't care. I still want to be one. He couldn't even explain why. Maybe it was something about Xiangshan's passionate speech. It lit a fire in his chest. Xiangshan had warned that lacking inner power could lead to dangerous anomalies, but Yuki felt just fine. That defiant spirit caught Xiangshan off guard. Maybe the kid really was worth teaching. All right then, sit down. I'll teach you what a true Xia needs to know first. His mind stirred. Memories long buried began to awaken. Maybe passing down a few things to this stubborn brat wasn't such a bad idea. So he began with the curse of knowledge. Sometimes, in a life of ignorance and peace, not knowing your own suffering might be a form of happiness. It's like chasing after the light, yet always being trapped in a darkness you can't escape. Yuki was completely lost. Why did everything Xiangshan said today sound so cryptic and hard to understand? But deep down, he trusted Xiangshan. He too wanted to live a life that was easy, comfortable, and free. When he mentioned the word freedom, Xiangshan nodded. That's it. This kid had the soul of a Xia. Because at its core, being a Xia means fighting for freedom. But don't get me wrong, Xiangshan added. Freedom doesn't mean doing whatever you want. Some Xia may fight for themselves, but most fight for the freedom of others. Since ancient times, it's always seemed natural for the strong to prey on the weak. But that's a dangerous misconception. This so-called law of the jungle is nothing but a betrayal of humanity's shared ideals, leaving the vulnerable in constant fear. But one day, a remarkable man stood up. His name was MOD. He introduced the concept of mutual benefit, an idea that was incredibly rare at the time. This is the true power behind legalism. Just like in Buddhism, where one must first cultivate the heart, most people don't naturally want to break the law or defy order. But the truth is, laws rarely protect the people. They protect wealth and the ruling class. The real beneficiaries of any system are always the elite perched at the top of the pyramid. Suddenly, Xiangshan trembled. It was as if another buried memory had surged back. Throughout human history, the strong have trampled the weak. It's always been seen as just the way things are. In today's terms, they call it high-spec units exploiting low-spec ones. But whenever things reach that breaking point, there's always a spark. A few will rise and form a force of resistance. In that sense, Xia are the underdogs of society, but they're also its most dangerous rebels. Yuki listened in silence, and for the first time, something in his eyes shifted. He was starting to understand. In truth, not all Xia are saints or villains. Though powerful as individuals, their true enemies are often entire systems of power and profit. That's why, throughout history and across civilizations, most rebellions end in failure. The true essence of martial arts is assassination, giving the weak a chance to strike the strong with minimal cost. But in the end, martial arts are just tools. They can serve the just or empower the corrupt. Tyranny, after all, is just a few hoarding power and resources to oppress the many. Remove the few, and the tyranny falls. Xiangshan turns slowly to Yuki. External martial arts? They're essentially assassination techniques. And what truly fits cybernetic bodies isn't ancient martial arts, but something born from early Western firearms tactics. This new form of assassination blends guerrilla warfare, sniping, and special ops theory into one lethal style. And thanks to the limitless potential of cyber bodies, it's evolved beyond human imagination. In the end, martial arts are just algorithms. External styles are templates. Internal arts are data. At last, Xiangshan passed down his entire philosophy about xia, inner strength, and Turing theory to Yuki, demanding he start with internal training. Then, with hands clasped behind his back, he solemnly declared, "From this day forward, I am your master." Yuki blinked in confusion. Master? Is that something you eat? Xiangshan nearly fell over. Master means a sacred pact between xia, not a snack. The next morning, while Xiangshan was busy tinkering with his new cyber body, the mayor decided to drop by. He'd clearly heard about the part's purchase and strutted in like a seasoned expert, offering unsolicited advice. But this time, Xiangshan wasn't the clueless York he used to be. If the mayor knew he was a xia and still tried to cozy up, there had to be an ulterior motive. Still, it didn't really matter. He was in such a ruined state. Who would bother scheming against him now? Right now, what mattered most was finding a solid, battle-ready outer shell, and a skull cap that fit like a glove. With half his brain exposed, getting into a fight like this was asking to get it scooped out like melon flesh. Suddenly, the mayor remembered there was an unused 3D furnace in town that might help Xiangshan. He yanked him over with enthusiasm. No need to discuss payment. Just take it as a thank you from us. That made Xiangshan instantly wary. He wasn't the type to believe in free lunches. Sure enough, the truth came out. In just half a month, the welfare officer would be visiting. Town subsidies were tied directly to tax quotas. And this time, they were supposed to hand over 19 babies, but only 18 were delivered. That missing one could cost them everything. If the higher-ups withdrew their protection, savage raiders from the wasteland could swarm in unchecked. With palms pressed together in a plea, the mayor begged, "If the raiders do come, please help us hold the line." Xiangshan was speechless. So this was the real price behind their generosity. He worked late into the night, finally making some headway. Staring at Will's canine-shaped cyber body, he fell into deep thought. I need to break this down fast and turn it into something I can actually use. He quickly realized that the synthetic muscle fibers in this cyber body could be dismantled individually, and the embedded chips were capable of powering separate body functions on their own. What thrilled him even more was the power core, far more advanced than his old rusted battery. At the very least, endurance wouldn't be an issue anymore. But what really shocked him was this. The mangy cyberdog actually had a built-in internal combustion engine. He dipped a finger into the liquid, dripping onto the floor, and rubbed it lightly. A blue flame suddenly ignited on his fingertip. It was ethanol fuel. A hybrid energy system? Seriously? These were the only usable parts for now, and he still wasn't sure how far he could push the modifications. First things first, he had to deal with the control chip. But as soon as he connected it to his neural system, a glaring issue popped up. The data inside the chip was a mess. In an age of such advanced tech, the core programs were still written in plain old C language. The drivers weren't just outdated. They lacked even basic encapsulation. It was like a martial artist with perfect form on the outside, but a hollow shell within, forever stuck at the same level. After a moment of thought, he had no choice but to rely on the programming knowledge still lingering in his brain to rewrite the chip from scratch. Meanwhile, Yuki had already wandered off. Whatever his master was working on, it was way beyond his comprehension. Ever since he started calling Xiangshan master, the local bullies began avoiding him. After all, no one wanted to mess with the guy who knocked out a trained warrior. But as he strolled through town, a towering figure suddenly stepped into his path. The man grabbed Yuki by the collar, his grip firm and threatening. Yet a second later, something seemed to flash across the man's mind, and he abruptly let go. This man was one of Inner's men, the same thug who had forced Xiang Shan into the arena. That entire setup had been Inner's doing. Back at the workshop, Xiang Shan was still deep in his code, racing against time to reprogram the chip. He merged advanced math with raw coding logic, then fed in the core of his inner force, what he called thinking language. All the data, once scattered, now fused into a unified system, and from it emerged something brand new, a cybernetic martial arts doctrine. To prevent his thinking language from being deciphered, Xiang Shan restructured the program using a far more advanced algorithmic method. After 72 grueling hours, he finally completed the rewrite. In the process, he unlocked even deeper layers of knowledge. This one-of-a-kind coding language might very well be the most complex system in existence. And for a true martial hacker, it was the sharpest blade of all. Meanwhile, high on a dopamine rush, Inner swaggered leisurely back into town. Under the Dyson principle, most addictive substances were strictly banned. But compounds like high testosterone, which got you high without causing addiction, were still widely available. These days, it was common for people to get a post-battle or post-game injection, a quick way to loosen up and feel like gravity didn't apply. Inner still remembered his first shot. For a moment, it felt like his human body and his manhood were finally restored. But just as he was floating in bliss, a shadow dropped from above. A barbed hook shot out, latching tightly onto his motorbike's tire. The figure stepped forward, leather jacket, steel boots, and a glare that screamed trouble. It was none other than Rafe, the notorious wasteland outlaw and core member of the Z Syndicate. Inner froze. He knew better than to provoke a reaper like this. In a trembling voice, he asked, "Sir, what can I do for you?" But the man just laughed. "Heard your little town birthed a real tough guy. Took down the tax officer's personal warrior, didn't he?" Inner's face twisted with rage. Without a word, he revved his engine and charged straight at Rafe. But Rafe didn't even flinch. With a casual swing, he blew out Inner's front tire on the spot. The noise jolted Villy awake. He stumbled out, rubbing his eyes. What the hell is going on? Rafe didn't bother with small talk. One clean shot, Villy's skull burst like a melon. Inner stood frozen in place, drenched in cold sweat, unable to even speak. Turns out, since the town failed to meet its tax quota, the Lord had revoked its monthly protection. And Rafe? He was just the first hyena to smell blood. Inner, completely terrified, spilled everything he knew about Xiang Shan. Rafe raised an eyebrow. Beat? Well, after losing all his martial algorithms? Huh, now that's interesting. Meanwhile, the tax officer stared at the terminal in front of him. On the screen was a full dossier on Rafe. He had known Rafe's every move and intention, yet chose to remain silent, even knowing the man was a notorious wasteland thug. As a robot, he held no illusions about humans. In his eyes, they weren't even capable of creating true artificial intelligence, just artificial stupidity. Anything a computer could do, humans could eventually reproduce themselves with enough time and effort. Yuki, hearing Xiang Shan relay this, looked skeptical. But in chess, machines already beat the best human players, right? Xiang Shan just smiled. Sure, the machine plays chess, but it has no idea why it plays. Computers can mimic, but they'll never exceed the human mind. With that, he casually picked up a metal rod. He knelt down and drew letters in the dirt. Lesson 1, Boolean logic. Take any two values. They could be numbers, letters, whatever. 1 gives rise to 2. 2 leads to 3. Every piece of modern computing starts from here. In other words, even drawing in the dirt with a metal rod could achieve the same result. Computers simply replace the human hand. Boolean logic breaks down human understanding into formats a machine can execute. And the ultimate masters of internal strength, inner power, aim to encode their insights into computers, unlocking the machine's full potential. Mathematics is the Tao. Boolean logic is the rule of numbers. From the Tao comes 1. From 1 comes 2. This progression is the essence of inner strength. Yuki, listening to all this philosophical rambling, looked completely lost. Not a single word made sense. And to make things worse, Xiangshan actually assigned him homework. As night fell, after days of meticulous adjustments, Xiangshan had finally completed the prototype of his new cyber body, assembled from the parts of Will's old frame. He called Yuki over, and without a word, carefully removed the chip from the boy's brain. Sure enough, in this world, the system never allows the weak to rise. Yuki's chip had zero firewall protections and was riddled with bugs and exploitable backdoors. Xiangshan began by reinforcing Yuki's chip with a firewall to block any potential surveillance. Then, he ran another deep scan for lingering bugs. Sure enough, Yuki's cyber body moved far more fluidly than before. With this chip, he could finally set himself apart from the average human. Once that was done, Xiangshan threw himself back into crafting his own custom chip. He had considered refusing the mayor's request, but deep down he knew if he turned a blind eye this time, he might lose the very reason he became who he was. Running is always the safest option when facing overwhelming odds. But martial arts were never meant for running. They were created to protect the weak. Holding up the finished chip, he said, "Install this into my bio-brain. With it, I can finally reclaim who I used to be." The moment it was connected, Xiangshan's cybernetic body jolted, immediately initiating a full diagnostic scan. As he looked at the pile of alloy armor the mayor had delivered, Xiangshan finally understood just how fragile his current body truly was. Before the welfare officer arrives, he must acquire a pair of hands strong enough to rival a real martial artist's. Meanwhile, Inua had already slipped quietly back into town. Shockingly, Inua stood before the townspeople and lied, claiming that Villy's death was Xiangshan's fault for refusing to sell that cybernetic dog body. But before he could finish, the mayor pulled the trigger without hesitation. "Without Xiangshan, we couldn't even pay our taxes." In that moment, the mayor showed rare backbone. To protect the town, he had already spent a fortune hiring 3 martial artists from outside, because today was the welfare officer's inspection day. Just then, a thunderous roar echoed from above. A massive aircraft descended slowly onto the outskirts of the town. From within stepped a towering figure clad in a single-eyed metal helmet, his presence cold and oppressive like an upright steel drum. One by one, rows of infant strollers were wheeled out after him. This was the year's welfare package. Any household wishing to adopt could walk up and claim one on the spot, pick a child, and take them home. But the mayor didn't relax, because the most critical announcement hadn't yet come: whether the town would retain its protection status. And just like that, the one-eyed man turned and began to leave. The mayor stepped forward, wanting to speak, but no words came out. To everyone's surprise, the man turned back and glanced at the old mayor. "Haven't you already set everything up? Do I really need to say more?" With that, he walked off on his own. 19 days from now, I'll officially declare the town under protection. Until then, those 3 warriors are your best bet. But no sooner had the welfare officer's plane lifted off than chaos erupted. A thug came charging onto the square like a man possessed, like he was afraid someone might beat him to the prize. The 3 warriors immediately went on high alert, their black robes fluttering. Anthony took the lead, hoisting a massive Gatling gun and firing without hesitation. But shockingly, the thug began to spin in place, forming a tornado-like vortex that deflected every bullet effortlessly. Then, bam, a piercing beam of light shot forth, cleanly blowing a hole through Anthony's skull. Instant kill. The attacker was none other than Waifu, the infamous wasteland marauder. Anthony had once single-handedly wiped out 30 raiders, and now he'd been one-shot. The remaining 2 warriors were stunned, but pride wouldn't allow them to retreat. With a burst of movement, they dove into the fray. Lonconi was the first to strike, swinging his dual scythes with deadly speed. Sparks flew as the blades clashed against Waifu's steel rod, the sound sharp and explosive. Lonconi thought he had the upper hand, slashing with deadly precision. But what he didn't realize was Waifu hadn't even used 10% of his true power. Seeing the fight drag on, the last warrior, Baelus, couldn't hold back any longer. With a roar, he surged forward with all his strength. But even someone as brute force as Bayless found himself unable to take a single step closer to Waifu. He launched a flurry of punches like a hurricane, but Waifu remained unfazed, dodging, weaving, deflecting with ease. Then, seizing an opening, Waifu swung his rod at Bayless. But just when it looked like he would strike true, he suddenly reversed direction and smashed straight at Long Coney. Caught completely off guard, Long Coney had no choice but to brace for impact. With a sickening crack, his entire arm was sent flying, blood spraying through the air. Furious and desperate, the two warriors decided to unleash their strongest combined attack. But just as they began to move, both froze mid-action. Their faces went pale, as if bewitched. Countless voices echoed through their minds, twisting their thoughts and breaking their focus. Only then did they realize Waifu had mastered the legendary vision technique. A true internal arts master who could crush any external fighter with just a single glance. Paulus's eyes widened. He recognized that move. It was the same technique used in a massacre years ago. Back then, a wandering martial artist had been exposed, drawing hundreds of fighters to challenge him. But the man didn't even lift a finger. He simply glanced at them. And just like that, the entire mob turned on each other, slaughtering their own allies like madmen. Seeing the flicker of recognition in Paulus's eyes, Leaf chuckled. Didn't expect anyone in this dusty town to know that technique. "Don't stare into my cyber eye," he added casually. The moment Long Coney made eye contact, it was already too late. Most martial fighters rely on infrared vision during combat to scan for hidden threats, but Leaf had hijacked that signal to infiltrate Long Coney's system. Regular hackers might take minutes to breach such defenses, but for someone trained in inner power, it takes less than 1/100th of a second. With a fist sync interrupted, even a lightning-fast reboot wouldn't save him. One forced shutdown of the combat protocol, and a fatal moment of days would follow. The fact that Leaf could instantly take down a ranged combatant like Anthony made one thing clear. His eyewitness technique wasn't just for show. He raised his hand for the final strike against Paulus, then froze mid-motion. Turns out, Leaf hadn't been fighting alone. His teammate, Boomquake, had linked to his nervous system via Wi-Fi, sharing access to the eyewitness protocol. It was Boomquake who held him back, because Paulus's external martial skills were too valuable to waste. In the world of brawlers, the tank-class fighter was a rare gem. Paulus misunderstood, thinking they decided to spare him. He quickly put on a flattering smile, trying to slip away. But instead, Leaf offered him a deal. With life hanging by a thread, Paulus made his choice and pledged allegiance. To show goodwill, Leaf even deactivated the eyewitness connection. Betrayal wasn't a concern, because in this gang, loyalty was forged through shared memories. Their bond wasn't built on trust or honor. It thrived on looting, bloodshed, and wild indulgence. This chaotic freedom, even top-tier martial artists struggled to resist its pull. But Paulus was never their true target. They had come for someone far more dangerous, a man who could take down trained warriors, Shangshan. To the untrained eye, he might seem unremarkable, but anyone who beat Will in a fair fight was someone worth recruiting. Suddenly, Anthony, on the brink of death, jerked upright in a desperate final spasm. Leaf didn't hesitate. One clean strike. No second chances. The town mayor lunged in rage, but before he could land a blow, he was cut down instantly. At that moment, Boomquake's sensors picked up movement. Yulia was fleeing the town with Yuki. Leaf narrowed his eyes, then bolted in pursuit. Yuki's right leg had been blown off, blood pooling beneath him. Yulia frantically tried to lift him up, urging him to repair his cyber limb. But she never noticed. Leaf was already closing in from the shadows. Desperate, Yulia even offered her brain fluid data in exchange for mercy. But Leaf seized Yuki by the collar and growled, "Tell me about that man you dragged out of the junk heap." It was only then Yuki realized this wasn't about them. They were after his master. Leaf's grin widened with excitement. Anyone referred to as master in this era was no ordinary survivor. Capturing such a figure alive, that was a rare and valuable prize. Moments later, Yuki was hoisted up by a staff, paraded through the streets. a living bait to lure out the elusive Xiangshan. The townsfolk watched in silent fury, afraid to act as Yuki was paraded like a trophy. Then suddenly, Enoch stepped out from the crowd. Yuki lashed out at him, screaming that his betrayal had led to his mother's death. Only then did Enoch realize the weight of his actions, but by now, his courage had already fled. Meanwhile, deep inside a derelict warehouse, Xiangshan was undergoing his final transformation. He was merging with Will's chip, absorbing its memories to inherit a master-level combat system. Outside, Leaf had arrived. After scanning for heat signatures, he smirked and began shouting insults to provoke a reaction. And then, boom, a thunderous stomp shook the earth. Clad in martial armor, Xiangshan burst forth like lightning, rescuing the dying Yuki in one swift move. As he looked down at his disciple, who had endured unbearable pain just to protect him, rage filled his eyes. He turned coldly to Leaf. "You, the silver drive shaft Leaf? Successor of the SSC triple fusion staff?" With the memories from Will's chip flooding his mind, Xiangshan exposed Leaf's dirty past, losing at the Para Games, then beating his opponent to death with a staff just to hide his shame. After being expelled from his sect, Leaf didn't just walk away. He wiped out every last fellow disciple, even those who once called him brother. Xiangshan sneered. "You called it a martial artist? You're nothing but a thug hiding behind a title." Leaf scoffed. "Please, if a fighter doesn't use power to dominate, what's the point of training at all? Your whole weak beats strong fairy tale is ancient history. In this world, strength is the only truth. The weak don't survive, they disappear." Then, instead of striking, Leaf shifted gears. "Look, I know you were part of the old-school Wallene sects, but let's be honest, they're irrelevant now. Join us in the Green Path Brotherhood. No dogma, no rules, just raw freedom." Xiangshan blinked, caught slightly off guard by the proposal. In his mind, the fall of tyranny should have ended the era of mercenaries and assassins. But now someone had rebranded lawlessness and even gave it a fancy name like Green Path. Not that it mattered. He had no interest in walking the same path as scum. He simply stared him down and asked, "Is that how you recruit people? Offer freedom with one hand and hold a knife in the other?" Leaf didn't get angry. He had never expected a yes. He'd come here to fight. Planting his staff firmly before him, he smirked. "Great sword technique. Let's open with a kill." Xiangshan's gaze sharpened. With Will's memory chip now part of him, he knew just how lethal that style was. At this level, a staff swing carried the weight of a blade. One hit could split him in two. His mind raced, calculating every possible move Leaf might make. Physically, he was outmatched. And worse, he could sense the lingering threat of that bizarre eyewitness technique in Leaf's body. As Xiangshan processed the variables, Boomquake suddenly lunged in, launching a preemptive strike. A beam of infrared light shot straight into Xiangshan's left eye. Boomquake smirked, certain the control link had been established. But nothing happened. No twitch, no stutter, like the signal hit a wall. Boomquake froze. "What the? Is that a firewall?" But there's no trace of interception. A chill ran down his spine. Could such an advanced inner technique really exist, so refined it leaves no digital footprint? But for Xiangshan, the infrared assault wasn't entirely useless. That sudden jolt of foreign code stirred something deep inside him. A woman's image slowly emerged in his mind, soft and elusive, yet unforgettable. She had once looked at him with a gentle smile and said, "Let me teach you 3 techniques. If you master them, you'll never be caught off guard again." True martial mastery lies not in brute strength, but in attacking and retreating without leaving a single trace. These are what some call the Dragon Slayer Trio. First move, scan your internal systems for any anomalies. Second move, hijack and scramble foreign code, then repackage and return it. Third move, erase every trace of your digital presence, so clean they won't even know you were there. They sounded simple, but each contained a level of insight far beyond raw technology. At that very moment, Leaf's expression shifted. Something felt wrong with his cyber eye. Leaf suddenly realized his vision had gone haywire. At the exact moment Xiangshan received his eyewitness technique, he had covertly bounced several high-frequency QR codes back into Leaf Cyber Eye via infrared signal. Those few hidden codes were enough to crash Leaf's entire visual system. Worse still, Boomquake's malicious code, initially injected into Xiangshan, had been rerouted through Leaf's own body and sent right back into Boomquake's core. The so-called Eyewitness Protection Protocol, useless in the face of a true code master. Boomquake finally realized the danger. He sent a rushed alert. In and now, if this drags on, we're toast. But it was already too late. Every command he'd sent had been hijacked, rewritten, and turned against them. And he didn't have the skills to undo it. In just 3 minutes, rising internal temperatures would overheat their systems, melting circuits, frying processors, burning their bodies from within. Their only chance was to take down Xiangshan immediately and retreat for emergency support. Leaf made his move, no more hesitation. He launched himself forward like a human missile, fists clenched, eyes locked on the target. But Xiangshan wasn't the kind to wait around and die. As Leaf charged in with lethal force, he leapt to the side, narrowly evading the blow. In midair, he twisted, flipped, and shifted direction, eyes locked on Leaf, scanning for any gap in his defense. But Leaf wasn't some brute swinging wildly. His external power was solid. That staff of his never stopped moving, striking at every point Xiangshan could possibly land. Then, an opening. As the staff smashed into the ground, Xiangshan lunged and grabbed the tail end. Leaf reacted instantly, yanking both the staff and his own body upward, trying to fling him off. But Xiangshan held on like a vice. The difference in body weight between their cybernetics was massive. For a moment, Xiangshan couldn't even counterattack. The flurry of strikes from Leaf grew more intense, until Xiangshan could barely hold on. Just before a crushing blow landed, he twisted free and flipped onto a nearby rooftop, narrowly avoiding serious injury. But as he landed, a cold jolt ran through him. His right arm had gone numb. Must have been damaged during that earlier impact. Something in the internal dampeners had failed. Leaf's pupils narrowed. He had locked on, like a hawk spotting its prey. His staff ripped through the air, a black flash swinging in for the kill. Xiangshan rolled aside just in time. He couldn't fight back. He could only run. Leaf had him beat in raw strength, matched his speed, and could easily crush him if he took a single hit. But then, Xiangshan skidded to a halt. He planted his feet, stared Leaf down. The window he'd been waiting for had finally opened. As the staff came crashing down, Xiangshan didn't dodge. He jumped straight into the air, right at his enemy. He'd started to see the pattern. Every swing, every move. Leaf was fast, but predictable. In the end, martial arts was just assassination dressed up with discipline. If you couldn't kill in one strike, your muscles meant nothing. The only way to beat someone stronger? Keep moving. Dodge everything. Wait for the crack, and then hit it hard enough they don't get back up. Xiangshan zipped across the battlefield like a shadow. Every time that staff came inches from his face, he bent, twisted, or flipped out of danger by the thinnest margin. While dodging, Xiangshan analyzed the staff movements. He'd never seen this SSC triple fusion staff before. Probably a technique developed while he was in stasis. Still danger-wise, this fight wasn't half as intense as the one he had with Will back then. That time, Will might have been weaker, but Xiangshan's body was basically scrap metal held together with bolts. If Will's cyber body was a solid 100, Leaf's setup had to be pushing 300. And back then, Xiangshan's own rig? Barely a 1. Now, the difference wasn't that insane, just a few multipliers apart. But when it came to combat technique, Leaf's might score a 100. Xiangshan's? His internal and external styles were league beyond. Try 1,000, maybe 10,000. He glanced at Leaf and muttered, if he actually understood this hardware, he'd be gripping the staff from the middle and using split-range attacks. But now it was too late. Leaf's inner system was compromised, and the commands he'd issued couldn't be undone. That's when Leaf finally realized this wasn't some desperate survivor. This guy was a monster in disguise. Leaf actually took a step back. His first instinct, run. But before he could even pivot, Paulus and Boomquake arrived at the scene. Neither of them really wanted to get involved, but unfortunately, Boomquake had already planted control code in their systems. Their bodies moved whether they liked it or not. Xiangshan was now stuck in a 3-on-1 death match. Leaf made up his mind, forget honor. He'd let the others do the dirty work and strike when it was safe. Worst case, if things went south, he could bail at any time. Paulus glanced at Xiangshan. The guy looked like a pile of junk bolts, and yet he'd held his own against Leaf? That was impressive. For a split second, he actually considered teaming up. Maybe, just maybe, they could take Leaf down. But then, BZZT. A surge of code flooded his brain, wiping that thought clean. His expression blanked. Without a word, he swung, his fist tearing through the air straight at Xiangshan. Leaf didn't waste a second. He raised his staff, gripped the middle with both hands, and unleashed his deadliest move. The ends of the weapon began to vibrate violently, cracking the air itself with sonic shockwaves. In one swift motion, he spun the staff overhead, turning it into a black cyclone of death. He could only maintain this for 3 seconds, but right now that was all he needed. Xiangshan felt it instantly. This wasn't something he could take lightly. His instincts screamed at him to stay sharp. Leaf locked in on both targets and launched a signature move called Phoenix Triple Strike. Xiangshan braced himself for a direct hit, but at the last second, Leaf changed direction mid-attack. And before he could recover, Paulus's fist came flying in from the front. These crude, brute force attacks, Xiangshan had seen 1,000 just like them. He already knew the next move before Paulus even threw it. Xiangshan caught Paulus's fist mid-swing, twisted with the momentum, and dodged Leaf's incoming staff by inches. Before Paulus could even react, Xiangshan launched a brutal kick right to the skull. Crack. Game over. Rule number 1 in a 2-on-1 fight: drop the weak one first. Xiangshan didn't hesitate. One clean hit, one less problem. Leaf saw his teammate go down in a flash, and without a second thought, tossed his weapon and bolted like a track star. Xiangshan blinked. Damn, that guy runs faster than he fights. But before he could finish the thought, bang, a truck exploded out of a nearby building, tearing through the wall. Yulia was behind the wheel, shouting at the top of her lungs, "Get back here, you coward!" With a wild drift, she whipped the truck around and floored it straight toward Leaf. Tires screeched. Steel crunched. She rammed him hard, smashing through not one, not two, but 3 entire buildings. Leaf tumbled off the hood in a cloud of dust, face twisted in rage. "You psycho. I'll send you flying." Just as Leaf wound up to strike, Xiangshan dropped from above, slamming him mid-motion like a hammer from the sky. That was the final straw. Leaf snapped, rage boiling over. He lunged, trying to drag Xiangshan down with him in a last-ditch death grip, but Xiangshan saw it coming. He slipped to the side, smooth as water. Using the momentum, he redirected the force, sending it right back into Leaf's chest. Inside, Leaf's CPU flashed red. His system was overheating, on the brink of meltdown. He collapsed, defeated, body twitching, eyes burning with helpless rage. From the shadows, Boomquake finally stepped into the open. No more hiding. Xiangshan didn't wait. He launched forward like a missile, zero hesitation. In the blink of an eye, he landed right in front of Boomquake, blocking his path, eyes locked. Boomquake froze. He knew the second he showed up, he'd basically volunteer to die. In a panic, he turned sideways, revealing a built-in cannon on his torso, ready to fight back. But Xiangshan was already moving, a low slide straight toward him, knocking him clean off his feet with a brutal kick. Without wasting a breath, Xiangshan turned and charged straight at the downed Leaf. Leaf knew this was it. No escape, no backup. But instead of fear, he gave one final twisted smile, showing his true face. Xiangshan closed the gap, launched into the air with explosive power, and in one swift motion, delivered a spinning kick that sent Leaf's head flying. Boomquake watched it happen. His partner, his last line of defense, was dead. His hope collapsed. Instinct kicked in. Run. Run now, or die. But he barely made it a few steps before his body lit up in flames. The kill switch had activated. Turns out, that delayed detonation inside Boomquake. That was Xiangshan's little surprise, set long before the fight even began. Now, only one person remained on the battlefield, Paulus's clueless little teammate. The guy just stood there, dazed. How could someone so small wipe out an entire squad? It had to be some kind of game, right? He blinked, and in that blink, Xiangshan moved. One punch. Lights out. The guy hit the ground like a rag doll. That's when the mayor finally arrived, panting and wide-eyed. He raised a hand to stop Xiangshan, but he was far too late. The poor guy's head was already a crater. No saving that one. The mayor stared, frozen, then collapsed from shock, out cold on the ground. But just as Xiangshan turned to leave, his instincts flared. Something was off. Normally, when a hero takes down a gang of criminals, the crowd cheers, right? But here, all Xiangshan saw were eyes filled with unease. They stared at him, not with awe, but with fear, as if they couldn't celebrate the death of their oppressors because now their so-called savior felt just as terrifying. Xiangshan had won, yes, but his body had taken heavy damage. A nearby doctor whispered, "It's not that they hate you, it's the brain kill. What you did violates the Dyson principle." As he spoke, a scythe-armed prosthetic was surgically fitted into Xiangshan's shoulder socket. Xiangshan just smirked. The Dyson principle? Nothing but a punchline to the powerful. The strong have the freedom to destroy. The weak? They're shackled by rules that forbid resistance. This era might call itself free, but that freedom is selective, always conditional. And maybe that's why heroes like him never truly vanish. Because the world still needs someone who's willing to cross the line. But then it hit him. There were pieces missing, memories about the heroes before him, memories that he might have lost. Yeah, that must be one hell of a backstory. Xiangshan muttered, half joking, half sincere. He flexed his new scythe arm, nodding with approval. Classic mechanical drive, fused with artificial muscle fibers. Strength and agility balanced just right. That's when the doctor dropped a bombshell. Enoch had betrayed the town. Worse, he ordered Willie to push Xiangshan into that deadly ambush. So he sells me out and thinks he can just walk away? Xiangshan's tone went ice cold. He wasn't about to let that slide. Some might call it revenge. But in a world of vigilantes, justice often came off the record. Yuki was still unconscious. Alive, but barely. His heart, kidneys, and liver had all been replaced with synthetic organs. And ever since that happened, Yulia had grown distant. Cold, like she couldn't look at Xiangshan the same way. Even after killing Longkoni and freeing the town, the people kept their distance. Because deep down, no one wants to live next to a man who doesn't need permission to kill. That's when Xiangshan remembered. There were still 2 corpses lying outside. He dragged them into the cabin, prepping for a memory extraction that it was time to figure out what this Green Path Brotherhood was really about. From Leaf's memories, Xiangshan uncovered something horrifying. The so-called Green Path Brotherhood was a nightmare machine, pillaging towns, turning men into weaponized machinery, women into high-end dolls, and even children weren't spared. But what chilled him even more, these memories weren't just Leaf's. They were shared. The entire Z organization was plugged into a collective mind. Anyone implanted with this data would slowly rot from within. Like a drug, the thrill of chaos and carnage would root itself deep and bloom. Bloodshed in the name of freedom? That's just another lie. Xiangshan clenched his fist, then paused. Was he really any different? Sure, he fought for reasons. But in the end, violence was still violence. Some men are born for peace. Others only feel alive when they fight. A voice broke through his spiral. Master, Yuki, half his size, came barreling toward him with eyes full of excitement. Grabbing his arm, he beamed. I finally cracked the whole algorithm set. All of it. No errors. Xiangshan let out a rare, quiet sigh. The kid had talent. Real talent. Even without him around, he was growing. But Xiangshan wouldn't choose that path for him. Not the way of a vigilante. Especially now, Yulia was still recovering because of him. The townsfolk had seen what he really was. There was no place for him here anymore. When Xiangshan mentioned he was leaving, the room grew quiet. Yuki's eyes lit up. Where are we going? He asked, beaming. Xiangshan shook his head. Not sure yet. First, I find Enoch. Then, track down that so-called brotherhood. What I do know, I can't stay here. Yuki assumed, of course, that he was coming too. But Xiangshan was firm. Not unless your mother agrees. The path of a vigilante. Once you start walking, there's no turning back. Yuki's gaze hardened. If safety means giving up freedom, I'd rather be unsafe. For a moment, Xiangshan just stared at him. In that fire, he saw the echo of a warrior. He finally sighed. All right, if your mother says yes, you're coming with me. Still, he knew this journey wasn't going to be easy. After 2 brutal fights, something had become crystal clear. His missing memories weren't coming back on their own. Only war would wake them. Maybe that's what he'd always been, someone who lived for the next battle. Until one day, he lost the wrong fight. I've got no memories, no past, and no idea who I am, who I've lost, or who I'm in a fight. This world, it's a nightmare. Violence and blood at every turn. And me? All I can do is fight my way out, 1 kill at a time. Xiangshan had made up his mind. Green path or royalty, gangs or generals. If you're evil, you're his target. And above them all, the one who built this hell, the so-called father of machines. Sure, he was weak now, but every battle brought new parts, new powers, new tech ripped straight from his enemies. As long as he lived, that day would come. The day he faced the tyrant himself. That's what made him strong. Not his skills, his heart. Even if he forgot who he was, he never forgot why he fought. Funny thing is, the ancient game Super Mario somehow became part of modern martial training. Right now, somewhere across the world, a kid named Apennine had his brain jacked into a training rig. On screen, pixelated monsters and flashing fireballs flew at him like bullets. And right there, sticking out of the back of his head, a dusty old label that read, "Little Tyrant Learning Console." Yeah, somehow that thing made a comeback. Apennine couldn't stop watching Xiangshan's footage. The guy intrigued him, like something ancient wrapped in mystery. He'd originally dumped Will's body there on purpose, bait for raiders, but Xiangshan wiped out the whole plan. Alone. And now, a phrase bubbled up in his mind, something old school, Jianghu path. Wait, was Xiangshan actually a trained internal martial artist? He'd missed that completely, just as the realization hit and the headache kicked in. A raspy, gravel-chewing voice echoed behind him. Standing in the doorway was a beast of a hunting dog, pure muscle. Behind it, none other than Will's uncle, Altus. Altus plopped down with casual menace, his eyes sharp despite the slouch. From the dog's open jaws, a wrinkled human face emerged, smirking. "I'm not here for revenge," the old man croaked. "I just really hated that kid." Turned out, Xiangshan had dismantled Altus's proudest invention, a hybrid combat style of biomech boxing. The old man never got over it. Right on schedule, today marked the long-awaited return of the town's official protection system. In the past 10 days, thanks to Xiangshan's presence, not a single raider dared step foot near the town. During that time, he had taken his own enhancements to the next level. His cybernetic body was now rebuilt with near-perfect anatomical accuracy, denser muscle bundles where power was needed, lighter structure where agility mattered. But now that everything was in place, it was time to move on. While in seclusion, he even repurposed the leftover body parts from his fallen enemies into a new invention. Gazing at the bulky contraption, he smirked. "Let's call this thing Donkey." In a moment, Donkey powered on. The bonding protocol was completed. Meanwhile, the townsfolk were already gathered in the square, eagerly awaiting the arrival of the welfare officer. From the rooftop, Xiangshan stared out over the desolate landscape, then cast one final glance back at the worn-out town. It looked like nothing more than a junkyard. Yet as he was about to leave, a strange sense of reluctance crept into his chest. Just then, the mayor arrived with Yulia, stepping in to block Xiangshan's path. He might have spilled blood here, but without him, this town would have been wiped off the map days ago. The mayor handed over a small container. "Yuki asked me to give this to you." Xiangshan opened it and froze. Inside was Yuki's spare chip. He remembered clearly. He once told the boy that wiping this chip would mean severing their connection for good. Taking the chip without a word, he ran a full wipe protocol, then walked away toward the wasteland, his thoughts a tangled storm. Was he leaving the town, or leaving Yuki? Before vanishing from view, he paused and spoke to Yulia. "Tell Yuki, I've been deeply disappointed in him these past few days. If someone is willing to teach you with everything they have, and you respond with scorn, that's the greatest insult to knowledge. With a final cold glare, Xiangshan turned and disappeared into the horizon. What Xiangshan didn't know was that everything had been orchestrated by Yulia from the shadows. After a brief silence, he seemed to let it all go. He was leaving anyway, no point dragging baggage along. Yet when it came to Yuki, his only disciple, and the one who once saved his life, things weren't so simple. It wasn't attachment, but something heavier. Suddenly, he stopped and said to Yulia, if he stays true to his path and doesn't lose his way, he'll grow into someone remarkable. With those words, Xiangshan mounted his donkey and rode off, his figure fading into the endless desert. But just then, a lazy, mocking voice rang out from behind. The newcomer, none other than Ino. But gone was the clunky engineer look. He was completely transformed. Xiangshan's gaze sharpened like a blade. So you really had the guts to show up again. Ino, however, met him with a smug smirk. What? You think you can still stop me? His tone reeked of confidence, as if something powerful now had his back. Turns out, just before his death, Leif secretly passed on the coordinates of his organization's base to Enoch. That tip not only got Enoch in touch with the group, but also earned him a set of brutal combat techniques. Still, Tower Tech martial arts. That was a new one, even for Xiangshan. Xiangshan couldn't help but laugh. Did someone swap your brain with a toaster? Who told you it was a good idea to run your mouth at me? But Enoch had already lost it. His voice cracked with rage, like he needed to scream away years of resentment. Back in the town, he used to be the one calling the shots. Ever since Xiangshan showed up, everything changed. People stopped caring about him and started worshiping the so-called hero. Xiangshan shrugged. Your logic's so bad it deserved a museum exhibit. He narrowed his eyes. Since you had the guts to crawl out in front of me, are you ready for the consequences? With no more words to spare, he brought his hands together, steady as a blade. A hum of energy pulsed through his limbs, condensing into a razor-sharp edge. This was a precise counter to military-grade martial systems. Known as military combat arts, this style was developed for war zones. It's not something civilians could ever access, like trying to punch with a battleship. If classic martial arts were born to challenge injustice, then military combat systems were designed to crush it. Just as Xiangshan was ready to strike, the mayor cut in, worried that killing Enoch might violate the Dyson Accord and revoke their protection. Xiangshan scoffed. Protection? He was never even on the damn list. But then, something hit him. A sudden wave of discomfort pulsed through his chest. He froze for a second. He had no heart, and yet, why did it feel like something inside him skipped a beat? Above, a drone hummed silently across the sky. That's when it clicked. The feeling, it wasn't fear. It was electromagnetic interference. Xiangshan locked eyes with the hovering drone, as if seeing right through to whoever was behind the screen. And sure enough, hidden deep within the nearby wasteland, a shadowy figure was watching him, grinning from the dark. Judging by that level of surveillance, the guy probably had long-range cyber eyes or hypersensitive auditory implants feeding him every move. This man was ranked 98th on the Outlaw Tiger board, Goliath the chain missile sniper. He had dispatched a drone to tail Enoch, who was secretly implanted with an explosive parasite called Boomcore. Defying orders was no longer an option for him. Meanwhile, Goliath had climbed to the top of a trash mountain, the perfect vantage point. At long range, his style, ballistic combat, was absolutely dominant. He chuckled while setting his scope. They say the old martial masters hated ballistic techniques. Truth is, they just feared we'd blow every other tradition into oblivion. Sure, that warrior jammed my drone's signal, but I expected that. Against an inner-strength fighter, controlling data flow is step one. Their so-called energy waves, drop that into my jamming net, and it sinks without a trace. And the idiot actually jumped into the air. It just makes it easier to put a bullet through him. At that moment, Xiangshan sensed it. Something was slicing through the air toward him at incredible speed. If it's powder-based, the round flies at 3,000 meters per second. If it's railgun tech, more like 8,000. But using a drone for targeting? That screams extreme range precision shot. Now, where's the shooter? By his estimation, the bullet would hit in just 1 to 2 seconds. For a cybernetic warrior, 1 or 2 seconds could stretch into an eternity. If, and only if, he could instantly detect the shooter's muzzle and react before the bullet left the barrel. But the enemy wasn't a fool. He was trained too. He'd likely anticipated Xiangshan's dodge. If so, the bullet would already be screaming toward where Xiangshan planned to land, which meant returning to the original landing spot was a death trap. Taking down the drone and falling straight back? No chance. Though the air offered no solid footing, some fluid-like materials, when struck fast enough, momentarily behaved like solids, providing just enough resistance for a mid-air pivot. It was like trying to swim through mud, yet somehow slicing through it at light speed. Then, 2 high-explosive shells exploded out of nowhere, streaking through the sky. From a distance, Enoch cackled maniacally. "That's it, boss. Blow him to pieces. Let him burn." But Xiangshan hated ballistic combat with a passion. To him, true heroism meant standing your ground alone, even against the odds. Ballistic warfare? It was reckless, indiscriminate. Once a bullet leaves the chamber, it belongs to no one. Whatever happens next, no one takes the blame. Once a bullet is fired, it's out of your hands, and anyone in its path becomes a potential casualty. That's the brutal flaw of firearms. Too easy to harm the wrong people. Even poison, often condemned by martial artists as dishonorable, causes less collateral damage than a bullet. When 2 equally skilled fighters clash, the battle often becomes a dance of dodges and feints, neither daring to fully commit. And every stray shot, it becomes a deadly threat to the innocent bystanders caught in the middle. Right now, 2 such people are standing too close. Judging by the trajectory, they're right in the line of fire, headed straight toward the mayor and Yulia. Xiangshan twisted and flipped through the air, dodging 12 bullets in rapid succession. Then, with a sudden snap kick, he sent the mayor flying to safety. But Yulia, she was far too heavy to move in time. A deafening blast followed. She took the full force of the explosive shell. Xiangshan's eyes narrowed. So he's targeting me. Must have lost sight when that junk flew up. If he's predicting my path, but still getting thrown off by debris. Xiangshan murmured, "I've got a rough fix on your position." He glanced toward Yulia. Her mech was belching thick, dark smoke. She'd taken the hit after all. These past days, he had hidden among the garbage heaps, recovering in silence, absorbing fragments of enemy data to deepen his understanding of this twisted world. With his cybernetic eye, he had mapped the entire scrapyard. Every blind spot, every ditch, it was all stored in his neural chip. He now had a solid idea where the sniper was hiding. Factoring in terrain, the distance could range from 4 to 10 kilometers, with only 4 viable sniping spots in that range. By tracking the drone swarm's movement and analyzing bullet trajectories, he could narrow it down further. If the fire rate stayed consistent, he'd only need to dodge under 1,000 rounds to reach him. But the sniper clearly wasn't planning to let him close that distance. Bullet 14 was aimed at the mayor. Bullet 15 went for Yulia. The sniper was betting he'd risk his life to protect them both. Xiangshan's expression darkened. Had forcing heroes to protect civilians actually become a formal tactic, written into combat theory textbooks? These maniacs, how could they treat human life so cheaply? These were people, not just collateral. No matter who you are or where you hide, you'll answer for what you've done today. The sniper wasn't just skilled, he was a monster. Those first 2 bullets were clean kill shots, but Xiangshan evaded them mid-air with terrifying precision. The pressure form of the Tritech gun style relies on shots intentionally missing to manipulate movement. But the death net it weaves? That's all too real. Any stray round can end a life. No way. After unloading so many rounds, not a single hit, not even a graze. Wait a second, he's closing in? That guy's charging me for close combat? Bad news. I suck at close quarters fighting. Last time, I barely beat Leaf by using the Apocalypse tank technique. But if he beat Leaf head-on, then I don't stand a chance toe-to-toe. Which means my only shot at winning lies in the few seconds while he's sprinting toward me. I have to exploit that gap. This guy isn't some clueless brute. He's a close combat expert who also understands range tactics. He's not exploiting weaker foes. He's engaging on even ground. Only by defeating a fighter who also understands gunfire tactics can I truly prove my path is the real deal. I remember this high-speed movement technique. It's called the supersonic step. Mastering it is like throwing punches while standing in crashing waves. The push-off angle of the legs has to be just right. Too shallow, and my prosthetic won't get enough grip. Friction's too low. Too steep, and I might leap into the air, turning myself into an easy sniper target. And if my speed stays constant, I'm as good as dead. Predictable movement is a death sentence in this fight. That's why I layered shockwaves through the air, to let me change direction mid-sprint using pressure shifts. I'm almost there. I can literally see the bullet trails slicing through the sky. That busted warship panel up ahead. It'll make the perfect shield for a quick pivot. From afar, Gryad narrowed his eyes. So, he dove into the wreckage, tried to bounce his angle off the wall. Too bad. My drones can't keep up with those sudden turns. And worse, I didn't station any inside that wreck. Trying to pinpoint my sniping location. Please, long-range firepower isn't guesswork. It's physics and precision math. I just need to nudge my barrel a few millimeters, hell, even microns, and the entire bullet path shifts dramatically. No close combat fighter can ever outpace the speed of a gunman adjusting aim. The faster he moves, the tighter he walks into my bullet storm. I even left a few drones floating in decoy spots, just to throw him off. One wrong guess, and I gained 10 golden seconds to line up the kill shot. And he really fell for it. Trying to bounce off a vertical wall, mid-dash, that's textbook suicide. No traction, no dodge, dead on arrival. Wait, what? He landed like that. I missed. Fine, let's turn his path into a minefield. I'll paint his entire route with bullets. Meanwhile, Xiangshan quickly realized this cloud of fine dust would scatter most electromagnetic signals. It's the perfect cover against thermal or radar tracking. Judging from the trajectory patterns, there's no way the sniper is at point A or D. That leaves only B and C. There's no room for guesswork now. He'd have to read the bullet's movement, like measuring death in motion. A cyber warrior's reflexes run on metallized neural circuits, faster than insects, faster than anything with a spinal cord wrapped in myelin. If he pulled the trigger the moment I was falling, then that bullet would arrive at a precise moment. No guesswork, just physics. Even if I don't know which nest he's hiding in, the bullet will always pass through a narrow time window. And inside that window, there's one perfect microsecond where it slips right between my fingers. Empty the mind. Silence the instinct. Erase the fear. Then, through the arc of that bullet, Xiangshan locked in on Gryad's exact location. Damn it, Gryad cursed. All those shots missed. Dust is messing up visibility, and the drones picked up nothing. Show yourself, you bastard. Where the hell are you hiding? I'm getting nothing. Suddenly, a shadow cut across the edge of his screen. Gryad panicked, switching from zoom to wide-angle mode. The dust, it's shifting? No way. He's only now starting to accelerate. Wait a second. Asterisk, that's asterisk the bullet I fired a second ago. That guy. Is he seriously sprinting straight toward me, using his own bullet craters as stepping stones? In gun martial arts, distance is everything. Between 7 to 5 kilometers lies the zone of absolute dominance. Anyone outside that range is just a target waiting to drop. But once you cross the 4-kilometer line, the tables begin to turn. The farther you close in, the more that long-range advantage starts to fade. At that point, a high-precision cyber eye can track muzzle movements with terrifying clarity. Yet once you're within 100 meters, gunfighters reclaim the upper hand because close-range bullets leave no room for reflexes. Only when you're inside, that final meter can hand-to-hand combat truly take control, which means the next battlefield will be that golden 100 meters. He's racing to seize that crucial range, the very stretch where bullets and fists collide. He's even dragging the fight toward terrain that plays to his strengths. Current distance, 2,000 meters, and for every 10 meters I gain, I lose just a sliver of my reaction time. Still, I charge forward. The closer you get, the shorter the time between the muzzle flash and the pain. Every step forward is a gamble with death. It's like a rhythm game on speed mode. Miss a beat, and the price isn't a low score. It's your life. But I have no choice. I've got no long-range gear. If I want to win, I have to fight him up close. That means charging straight through this explosion zone to reach that walking tank. One wrong move, and I'll get launched by the shockwave. Easy pickings for a sniper shot. My heavy cyber body can take it, no problem. But your scrawny frame? Let's see if you can handle another welcome gift. Damn, he landed a hit. Gerriard's timing and spread control are way beyond what Rafe could pull off. He manipulated the angles and intervals, forcing me to deflect the decoys first, then finished it off with 2 precision shots, aimed right between my eyes. If I try to block that final round, the rest of the shots will rip my cyber body to pieces. Gerriard burst into laughter. Haha, this is my finishing move. I've studied your arms. Those metal limbs can't handle the pressure of my last bullet. Xiangshan scoffed. Oh, guess your intel missed one thing. My arms emit high-frequency shockwaves. And now, I've got you. Just then, Gerriard hurled a shiny metal orb into the air. No, it's way too close to his own face. If it were a real bomb, he'd be taking the blast himself. Which means it's not an explosive at all. It's metal particle aerosol, his last-ditch smokescreen. Knew it, good old Iron Bloom. Officially called metal particle aerosol, but people on the field just call it Iron Bloom or Flash Dust. Some folks even nickname it Waifu because it does everything. Blinds enemies, saves your life, and maybe even helps you cook. A must-have for any wandering hero. First off, metal is a superb conductor. Once it seeps into circuitry, it can short out entire power grids in seconds. It's also great for blocking EMPs and laser weapons. Mix it with the right compounds, and you can either cause explosions or patch up minor armor damage. Best part? It's dirt cheap. Old-school vigilantes used to toss this stuff around like budget smoke bombs. The trick to handling Iron Bloom? Just don't let it touch you. Worst case, flush it out with your cooling system and you're good. Gerriard stared at the shadow, forming on the smoke-covered ground. That figure rising from the haze looked almost divine. And the next instant, Xiangshan stomped him straight into the dirt. Mercy. Please, hero. I used to fight for justice too. I swear, I was dragged into this for loyalty's sake. Spare me, just this once. Xiangshan replied coldly. Relax. I'm not into torturing enemies. I'll make it quick. Suddenly, tendrils burst out from Gerriard's body, lashing out and binding Xiangshan in an instant. Ha! You thought I had no trump card? This is the latest weapon from the demonic sect, parasitic tentacles. But before he could even gloat, Xiangshan ripped him apart like wet paper. No hesitation, no mercy. Those tentacles? Packed with thick nerve clusters. Classic cephalopod style. Mammals use myelin sheaths to speed up nerve signals. But these guys? They took a totally different route. You remember the resistance formula? R equals resistivity times length / area. Translation? Thicker wires equals faster signals. So cephalopods said screw it. Let's bulk up the nerves. Less resistance, faster speed. Over half as fast as a human's brain. And here's the wild part. Each tentacle has its own mini-brain, like literal localized intelligence. Gerriard kept that intact. But the freaky part? Not just nerves. He's got actual electronic devices wired into his back, tangled up with his neurons. What the hell is this? Xiangshan froze. Who even does this kind of stuff? He yanked out all the tentacles. No surprise there. Those nerves were hardwired straight in the brain. This tech, where did it even come from? He had no memory of anything like this existing in his era. But now wasn't the time to figure it out. He just ripped out a few more cables from Gerriard's body and moved on. He linked his wrist port to the interface and cautiously guided his inner energy into Gerriard's system, scanning for any leftover drivers. Back in his day, martial artists could plant traps, like literal curses, inside other people's bodies. Gerriard's own skills were mid at best, but who knew what some hidden master might have left behind? Xiangshan had seen it all. Plenty of people died poking around corpses, never even realized what killed them. His inner energy surged like a tidal wave, flowing straight into Gerriard's hardware. The guy was almost fully cybernetic, and his lower body systems ran independently. Even if Xiangshan hacked the top half, the legs could still bolt. He dug through the system, neutralized over a dozen booby traps, and rewrote parts of the drive. Moments later, the cyber engine roared back to life. Then he tore open the armor and ripped out the wireless signal transmitter. He called over the nearest swarm of drones, pulled out a few random wires from Gerriard's body, strapped the transmitter onto one of the drones like it was no big deal. And while he was at it, he picked up the finger he lost to that bullet earlier. No way he was leaving that behind. Xiangshan let out a heavy sigh. This transport setup? Barely reliable. The drones didn't have enough memory for complex navigation scripts. And to make things worse, GPS was a thing of the past, replaced by some sketchy electronic sextant system. Who even knew if it worked over long distances? If the payload got lost mid-route, it'd be a disaster. But right now, he didn't have time to fix anything. There was still one more person he had to kill. Oh, Yulia! Yulia! Enoch's scream tore through the air, wild and unhinged. He floored the gas, slammed into reverse, then lunged forward, over and over, smashing into the back of Yulia's truck like a man possessed. He wanted both machines twisted into wreckage. He wanted both brains smashed into soup. Together forever. No more separation. Yulia, I love you. I love you. I love you. His voice, passed through a vocal filter, rang out disturbingly clear, like a love confession carved in madness. The earlier explosions had drawn a few townspeople's attention. Yuki, realizing this was the planned escape route, rushed over. Then he froze. Enoch, this psychopath, was trying to kill his mother, slamming into her again and again. Yuki sprinted forward, but Enoch didn't even aim. Just a casual backup, and Yuki was launched 5 meters across the pavement. Luckily, the guy wasn't trying to murder him yet. Yuki tried to stand, but the mayor held him down. One more hit like that, and his already wrecked organs would need another full replacement. If Enoch hit him again, the kid would be done. And suddenly, Enoch stopped. No, this isn't right, he muttered, dazed. This doesn't feel right. Why? 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 He slammed into Yulia's rig one last time. Hard. The beloved machine she treated like her second body snapped clean in half. I must be insane, Enoch muttered. Ever since that first shot of testosterone, I've been losing it. And just then, someone appeared, walking slowly from the edge of the village. Xiangshan stared at the wreckage. Calm, distant. Poor soul, he said. It's time to let go. He glanced at Yulia's front cabin. Gerriard's bullet had torn through the neural shield. Her brain, completely unsalvageable. Enoch roared and charged straight at Xiangshan, engine screaming. But Xiangshan didn't flinch. Yuki screamed in terror, helpless to intervene. But before impact, Enoch's entire truck twisted off balance, flipped 3 times, and sent both front wheels flying off. Xiangshan stood motionless amid the dust, holding 2 broken drive shafts like they were sticks of candy. The truck let out a mechanical whimper. As the dust cleared, Enoch's voice trembled through static. I must be insane. Xiangshan walked up to the crumpled front end. Quietly, he spoke. If you get another life, use that rage and strength for something that matters. Be a person. Just as he was about to hurl the metal rod, bang! A bullet landed right next to his foot, stopping him cold. The welfare officer stepped out of the crowd, shouting, "Stand down, you lunatic!" He wasn't alone. Over 20 armed escorts followed, each with a giant lens for a face, like walking security cameras. High-res optics, real guns, no blanks. The mayor rushed forward, panicking. This guy came to declare sanctuary status today. Any screw-up would be a disaster. But before he could say a word, the officer's cybernetic eye flashed red. The mayor froze. Mouth open. No sound came out. The officer had already pulled key intel from the mayor's brain chip. He noticed the commotion from his hovercraft and came down just to confirm. He sneered, "Stand down. Enoch's crimes have been reported. If they check out, he'll lose his sanctuary rights. But until then, I'm here to reaffirm. This town is still under protection. You don't get to execute anyone." Xiangshan chuckled. "Oh, and here comes the noble sir at last." The word "sir" came out like venom. The officer scowled, clearly irritated. Humans shouldn't play judge over each other. Stop this now, or you. Nice speech, Xiangshan cut in, but coming out of your mouth? Yeah, still reeks of trash. What did you just say to me? The officer's tone dropped, cold and sharp. The welfare officer wasn't exactly eager to fight Xiangshan. Intel said this guy had taken down a silver drive shaft, a monster class unit. Body and mind in sync. Too strong. Taking down a man like that? Way above his pay grade. That's why he brought 25 elite troopers. They looked casually spaced out, but their formation was tight. Rear rows could launch suppressive fire at a moment's notice. Front row? Melee lockdown to crush any martial move. But Xiangshan didn't even spare them a glance. He stared at Enoch's half-destroyed brain module and said, "You're right. No man should place himself above another. If a man's guilty, justice should handle it, not personal vengeance." But what happens when justice itself is broken? A red flag popped in the officer's mind. Some pre-installed combat protocol activated on its own .66. You maniac, the welfare officer's voice cracked. This wasn't just some vigilante. Xiangshan's voice deepened. Your so-called authority, the public power, it only exists because everyone gave up a piece of their own. That power was meant to protect people from being stepped on. But look around. You're the ones doing the stomping. He glanced sideways, eyes sharp. Equality, fairness, rule of law. Tell me, have you upheld any of them? Prove it to me, and I'll surrender. But you can't. So what? That justifies murder now? The officer snapped back. You maniac, the welfare officer's voice cracked. Damn right I am. Xiangshan's eyes lit up like sparks flying off steel. I'm public enemy number one, because chivalry is violence. It's rebellion with purpose. It's fury against injustice. And with that, he hurled the metal rod straight into Enoch's exposed brain core. The welfare officer didn't even hear the end of it. His system alarm had overridden everything. A fundamentalist Wuzu follower, he froze. After the 11th collapse, I thought they were extinct. This guy, a disciple of the original cyber martial prophet, the world's most wanted terrorist, the source of 2 centuries of chaos. Just then, multiple black shapes launched from the distance, arcing through the sky. The officer didn't hesitate. Intercept. The command rode an electromagnetic pulse, triggering the martial subprocesses in his soldiers' brains. Bullets lit up the air, shredding the can-sized projectiles mid-flight. But that was the setup. The instant they exploded, a silver mist erupted outward, using the blast wave to spread even faster. Tidehua, the officer muttered. That cheap little gadget? Standard issue for rogue fighters. Its popularity came from one thing. It was stupid easy to make. Tihua might be common tech, but there's no way this backwater village had the means to make it. Xiangshan shouldn't have it. And for a commander like the welfare officer, whose entire strength hinged on tactical formations, Tihua was a hard counter. The conductive metal dust scrambled electromagnetic signals. His commands couldn't fully reach his soldiers. TCH. So what? The officer sneered. If one smoke bomb could dismantle an entire army, martial warfare would be a joke. Sure, signals were blocked, but every soldier still had onboard processors. As long as they preloaded a fallback plan for Tihua exposure, they could still fight, adapt, and push out of the interference zone. Before the mist even touched ground, 10 streams of fire blazed toward Xiangshan that he moved like lightning, dodging shot after shot, until his entire figure vanished inside the silver fog. Xiangshan locked in. Chip-assisted perception kicked in. His neurometallic pathways surged. Every signal stood out crystal clear. Step. Step. Window. I made it out? The officer blinked that he missed a beat. His timing was off. Was he not trained for martial warfare at this level? He immediately tapped into the POV of 14 soldiers. Then it hit. A piercing screech detonated right in front of him. The entire aerosol cloud convulsed, stirred into chaos. And within it, 2 faint red lights blinked. Infrared? No. Internal force, the officer realized in horror. Tihua should have blocked all thermal signals. But Xiangshan had hit himself with internal energy as he exited the cloud, turning his own body into a perfect homing signal. Because he didn't know how to sync with martial warfare rhythms, he was 0.05 seconds too late. The welfare officer quickly resynced with his soldiers' cyber bodies. As he backpedaled, 11 rifles locked on, forming a wall of suppressive fire to block Xiangshan's charge. But then something felt off. Xiangshan wasn't dodging. When the red light burst from a mist, the officer finally saw it. Those were cyber eyes, yes, but they weren't his. They were just two artificial lenses wired to a power cell, thrown like decoys. And that screeching sound? Not a scream that IT was a spinning steel drive shaft, ripped straight from Enoch's body, thrown like a damn boomerang. Then, the real sound hit. A sonic boom split the air. Xiangshan broke the sound barrier, erupting out of the fog and crashing into the soldiers head-on. He'd held back during the first dodge, just to scan their combat parameters. Then, inside the mist, he unleashed his trap. Fake cyber eyes from Jerryard's corpse, powered by a mini drone battery to throw off targeting systems. In that instant, the welfare officer froze, his instincts, his logic, everything shut down. All he could see was a war god barreling straight through his army. 12 soldiers went flying. Xiangshan barely shifted, then locked onto his true target. The officer realized too late. He was blocking his own troops' firing line that he leapt back on reflex, trying to recalculate. But Xiangshan was already there. Before the officer even got 20 centimeters off the ground, Xiangshan slammed him back down with brutal force, breaking his stance mid-air. And in the exact same breath, Xiangshan's right hand shot forward and drove straight into the officer's throat. At that moment, the officer's optic lens locked onto Xiangshan's cyber eye. And that's when it hit. Something terrifying tore through the digital void. An overwhelming will smash straight into his neural chip. AGH! He screamed, short, sharp, like something had just ripped through him. His soldiers twitched in unison, systems glitching from the same invasive pulse. In a single, brutal motion, Xiangshan gripped and ripped, tearing the officer's head clean off his body. He calmly extracted the chip and memory core. "Don't forget your job, sir," he muttered. "You came here to declare sanctuary, remember?" Then, thunk, he tossed the severed head into the mayor's arms like it was trash. Xiangshan turned and knelt beside Yuki. The boy's breathing was barely there. He looked at the stunned mayor, then at Dr. Schultz, and sighed deeply. There was no way he could leave Yuki here. His mother was gone. The only adult who'd promised to care for him, dead. This town didn't even look like it had an orphanage. And if it did, could he trust it? Besides, Xiangshan had just murdered a protector of civilization in front of these fear-filled, obedient townsfolk. And Yuki was clearly his student. He wasn't about to gamble on how they'd treat the boy now. Xiangshan let out a quiet sigh. "All right, kid, you were right. I was wrong. You really were meant to be a hero." He lifted Yuki gently, then, without hesitation, slung the welfare officer's headless corpse over his shoulder. He walked toward the hovercraft the officer had arrived in. With practiced precision, he jacked the officer's neural drives into his cybernetic arm and channeled his internal energy through them. Instantly, gibberish, lines of completely unrecognizable code filled his interface. "Oh wow," he muttered. "Didn't expect that." It tracked. Back in his day, industry tech was always years behind academic theory. Now, that gap probably spanned decades, if not more. But for someone like Xiangshan, a martial artist with root-level control over logic-gated systems, even a binary-based Turing core could be persuaded that in under a minute, he hijacked the officer's chip and took full command of the hovercraft. But then, interference. A new force pushed against him. Not Code.Chi, another Interforce master, and it was coming through a satellite. He felt the latency just under a second. "So, they're close," he murmured. "Must be one of the local Lord's enforcers." He finished overriding the controls and launched the hovercraft, calculating his next move. And so, under the stunned, wide-eyed gaze of every townsfolk, Xiangshan took to the sky, carrying a dying student in one arm, hauling the corpse of a corrupted official in the other, flying low, riding the enemy's own machine into the unknown. A few minutes later, A soft flicker of light pulsed across the distant sky, like a delayed echo of some massive blast. For hours past, a massive Austrian black and tan hunting dog nudged a severed head with its nose, smirking. "Oh? So you got your head ripped off in a single move." "It was the Tiwa," the welfare officer snapped. "It disrupts military protocols. It's a hard counter." "TCH, the dog, Arcel Granddog, the hound of the wild hunt," scoffed. If Tiwa could really shut down an entire formation, the army would have been replaced by walking tanks long, AGO, and "Oh, this was your own failure, sir." He turned to the kneeling mayor and Dr. Schultz. "So what did you see?" "Just a streak of light across the sky." The mayor nodded frantically, too terrified to speak. "That swordsman, that hero, he's dead. He must be," the welfare officer muttered, clinging to whatever pride he had left. "With respect, sir," the dog growled. "You're embarrassing yourself. The more you talk, the worse it gets." Arcel laughed softly. "A man who cracked my martial code using only raw instinct and a biological brain. Who walked through your entire formation without an algorithm to lean on. That's not someone a stray missile takes down. That's a real swordsman." He casually kicked the welfare officer's severed head toward the mayor. "Hold on to that trophy. If another protector comes sniffing around, you'll know who to blame and who to appease." Granddog didn't really care about the welfare officer's fate, but image mattered. He had to pretend to care. After all, the officer was a certified protector, granted sanctuary status, official authority, and the privilege to live out his days in some orbital retirement vault, even if his brain got fried and his skills erased. Granddog wasn't like that. He had no sanctuary, no system title, that he served only the Lord. Thanks to that loyalty, he had serious pull. But in the end, he was still just a personal weapon, and not one recognized by the machine gods of civilization. From the severed head, a final surge of static fired through a failing chip. "W, are you doing?" Granddog grinned. "What else? I'm going to find that little bastard and kill him." Elsewhere, Yuki dreamed that he dreamed of his mother, back when she wasn't a truck, back when he was still small, not even tall enough to reach her knees. There might have been an older brother too, but those memories were fuzzy. The chip log showed he cried often back then, and every time, Yulia would scoop him up, hold him close, and hum some nameless lullaby. "It's all right," she used to whisper. "There's no real danger. With the protection of the father of all machines, humans are safe from illusions." She probably didn't even know what that meant. Maybe her mother used to say it too. Maybe it was just a human instinct to pass down hope like a spell. "Mom?" Yuki murmured in his sleep. "Yo, kid." A familiar voice cut through the fog. "You're finally awake." Yuki's eyes slowly rolled open. He saw a silver figure above him. It took several seconds before he recognized the face. "Master," he whispered. "Easy," Xiangshan said calmly. "Don't waste your strength. You're in no shape to talk." That's when Yuki noticed a cable extended from Xiangshan's neck and was plugged directly into his own chest. "Your lungs are toast," Xiangshan muttered. "The emergency organ's fried too. You're running off my battery for now. Just hold on until a replacement arrives." That did it. Yuki's tears began to fall. Xiangshan scratched his head. Right? He'd never studied child psychology. He remembered some bits of educational psych, but that was for teaching 20-year-olds, not this. He had no idea how to comfort a kid on the edge of death. "Whatever," he sighed. "If cry makes you feel better, then cry. Tears still have electrolytes and trace water. Could be worse." Earlier, he'd loaded Yuki into the hovercraft, took off, flew fast for a few minutes, then bailed. Barely 60 seconds after he jumped, a missile shredded the craft midair. Now, hidden in a new location, Xiangshan was doing field repairs, patching Yuki up while waiting for drone support and for the arrival of Donkey. But the boy's condition was bad. Heart? Barely functional, thankfully stabilized by the power feed. Lungs? Almost gone. Only one leaf was still working. Blood loss? Massive. Xiangshan, on the other hand, had no lungs at all. His biological brain had been modded long ago. He could substitute ADP energy with electrical field resonance that didn't really need to breathe. That a built-in filter membrane in his skull did the job just fine. Xiangshan didn't have a circulatory system. Not really to no blood. No vessels that Oh, hooking up his system to Yuki's wasn't going to keep the kid alive. Even if he wanted to donate parts, his body was too artificial. A full conversion. Nothing left that a cyborg hybrid like Yuki could use. So instead, he focused on the gear he'd taken from the welfare officer. Compared to the devices found on guys like Leif or Gerriard, this tech was from a completely different lineage. Take memory storage, for example. Leif had used magnetic disks, classic stuff, binary data stored via a magnetic grain alignment. That disk wasn't quite at the theoretical density limit, but still way beyond anything Xiangshan remembered from old industrial standards. But high density came at a cost. Smaller grains equals more sensitive equals easy to fry. That thing was a delicate little time bomb. It relied entirely on shock-dampening architecture and even had built-in error correction algorithms, just to keep data loss from thermal or kinetic noise in check. Xiangshan stared at the raw code for hours. Eventually, he heard it, a faint, insect-like buzzing, almost like an electric mosquito. He peeked out from the tent, really just a shredded black tapestry from the hovercraft, propped up with junk to block the wind. Outside, a swarm of drones floated past. Heading west, 4 of them carried salvaged components from Gerriard's body, including one of Xiangshan's own fingers. The drones landed, extending black solar panels to recharge. Xiangshan walked over and retrieved his package. That wireless transmitter, ripped from Gerriard, was hands down the most advanced piece of tech he'd touched. Better signal fidelity than anything on the welfare officer. Probably the highest spec part Gerriard had on him. Xiangshan shook his head. No, something still doesn't add up. You couldn't just call Gerriard's gear primitive. That wasn't the full picture. The biotentacles linked directly to his brain, the neural graphs tangled with dense signal cores. That was cutting-edge stuff. Tech so new even Xiangshan had no reference point for it. That's what made it weird. His memory drives were outdated. His signal emitter? Fairly advanced. But his wetware interface? Practically from the future. Mixed tech body, Xiangshan muttered. Different eras slapped together into one man. He stared at the signal emitter, still warm in his hands. What a ridiculous era this is. Now, all he could do was wait for the donkey to arrive. As he waited, he unlatched the scorched abdominal armor from his body. IT had taken the worst hits during the fight with Gerriard. Carefully, he used a magnetic screwdriver to remove the ethanol tank and mini-combustion engine. The battle had burned through most of the fuel. There was no way he'd find ethanol refills out here. Oh, now. It was just dead weight. He removed the engine housing, then tried, somewhat recklessly, to fit the signal transmitter into the freed-up slot. Honestly, it made zero engineering sense. You weren't supposed to cram your power and comms modules into the same cavity. If he had proper tools, he'd redesign the entire body layout from scratch. But he didn't. No auto dash rig, an omech bench, and his only assistant was unconscious. Yuki stirred once during the process, woke up, shed a few silent tears, and passed out again without saying a word. Hours later, Xiangshan gently pulled back Yuki's eyelid, checking for any response. This won't work? If we don't get fluids and nutrients in him soon, he's not going to make it. He glanced toward the horizon. Still no sign of the donkey. Xiangshan sighed. Time to admit it. The navigation code he'd written on the fly, absolutely garbage. That dumb thing's probably veered way off course, he muttered. The sun was dipping. No more waiting. We move. 1 more hour of battery drain, and neither of them would make it out alive. Meanwhile, on a different stretch of the plains, 2 maniacs on bikes roared across the wasteland. Ollie and Andy, hauling freshly stolen spinal rods and cybernetic parts like trophies. They screamed at the sky, riding high on stolen adrenaline. This was what they did. Ambush supply lines. Loot everything. Spare parts, spinal columns, power cells, even basic rations or melt-grade metal. They took everything. Ha! Check out this spine. Ollie cackled, shaking the bone like a flag. Can't believe that skinny little freak grew something this shiny. Damn! Hey bro, catch. Ollie cackled as he tossed the metallic spinal rod through the air. And he snatched it with one hand, strapped it across his back. Grow up, man. Let's get home. There might still be leftovers from that last raid. You grow up. Ollie snorted. We're bandits, not creeps. still into collecting people. Hey, there's a certain charm to it. Andy grinned, clearly not done talking. Wait, yo, look ahead. He pointed. Is that someone walking? Ollie squinted into the moonlight. Yeah, there was someone out there, moving slow, wrapped in fabric, carrying a smaller human on their back. Their shadows stretched long across the dirt, clear as day. A fighter? Not too slow. Maybe some scout dragging a hostage. Then where's their ride? Andy muttered. No bike. No drone. Maybe he's trying to join up. Brought a live offering, Ollie said, half joking. Andy nodded. Yeah, we get those. City rats snatch a neighbor, walk him out here like a gift. Guys limping like some low-tier cyborg. Ollie sneered. Not exactly threatening. Andy smirked. So, Ollie grinned back. Let's say hello. Let's go. One last glorious score. Hell yeah. The two maniacs howled with laughter as they charged. Ollie pulled out a long steel rod, tucked it under his arm, locking it in place. Forearm, bicep, and weapon formed a perfect triangle that a makeshift lance. Andy, he whipped out an insane hand cannon. More cannon than gun .25mm caliber, because subtlety was for cowards. And, as if that wasn't enough, a full meter-long machete was welded to the barrel he didn't plan to shoot. He was going full Mongol raider, yelling some nonsense war chant as he charged in. The guy wrapped in black ahead of them looked startled, started moving faster, running. Ha-ha! Cute. Ollie's lance should have hit first, but at the last second, the figure turned, let the steel glide past his chest, and used the momentum to dive roll under it. Andy, thinking it was a clean hit, came in swinging, but the man vanished. Andy suddenly felt slower. Wait, I'm on my bike. Then, ding, like someone tapped his skull. He didn't know what happened. His limbs stopped responding. You're already dead, a voice whispered right by his ear. Oh, I see. Andy's thoughts began to blur. Oxygen dropped. Brain faded to black. The last thing he saw, Ollie spinning his bike, screaming, "What the hell did you do to him?" And in that moment, Xiangshan gently tapped Andy's hand, still gripping the handlebars. Andy's bike suddenly veered. BM. It slammed right into the rear of Ollie's. Xiangshan calmly stepped sideways. One smooth motion. Crap. He's trying to pin my leg. Ollie realized too late. He'd boxed himself in. He vaulted off the seat, hoping to get free before the falling bike crushed his leg. But in midair, Xiangshan kicked the side of Andy's bike. Just a tap, but corrected the angle, and Ollie, already off balance, was thrown hard sideways. Then came a punch. A single strike, right to the temple. Ollie's skull held. Reinforced alloy, probably. But his vision went black as he slumped back onto the seat, half conscious. Xiangshan hooked the long rod with his toe, flipped it up, jabbed it directly into Andy's limp arm. Now both bikes rode forward in sync, one carrying a brain-dead corpse, the other a stunned, concussed wreck. It took Ollie several seconds to blink back to awareness. Wait, he stammered. And Mr. Hero, see, can we tea-talk this out? No talking, just grip the handles. I say go, you ride. Didn't you hear me? Crack. Xiangshan kicked Ollie square in the crotch. Metal popped loose. Your legs are done now. You know better than anyone. No legs out here means death. So here's your only job. Ride your bike, carry your passenger, and do exactly what I say. Got it. Ollie nodded furiously, panic written all over his face. Xiangshan needed transportation now. Not because he wanted it, because his battery was dangerously low. Luck wasn't on his side today. Or maybe that rushed pathfinding software really was a mess. He'd been wandering this wasteland for 6 hours, and the damn donkey still hadn't shown up. And now, even worse, the first of his tripwire traps had been triggered. Every few miles, he'd sacrificed a drone, rigging it into a booby trap and signal repeater. 15 minutes ago, the first one popped. The ethanol charge was weak, nowhere near enough to hurt a proper cybernetic body, which could only mean one thing. Someone had found the location. Maybe it was a random scavenger, but based on the distance from the wrecked flyer, no more likely, it was the authorities. They were already closing in. Xiangshan had a plan. He'd use these two roadside thugs as moving cover. Ollie wasn't thinking about regret anymore. He was drowning in pure, paralyzing fear. He heard the sound behind him, metal scraping flesh. Shan had lifted Andy's corpse with a weapon and dropped it behind his own seat, then took the man's oversized gun like it was loot. And Andy's bike? Still rolling. It had a low center of gravity, didn't need a rider. When turns came, Shan could just lean in with his staff. The stench of blood couldn't catch up to the speed, but the trauma did. Ali's eyes filled with tears. Ah, crying already? That cold voice stabbed right through his skull. Now you know what it feels like to be on the receiving end of violence. Asking me what I get from this. The voice was mocking. What? You think I'm here for profit? A hand clamped down on the back of his head, firm and unshakable. Ali's vision blacked out for a second. Panic swallowed everything. See that bloody spine on your brother's back? The voice hissed in his ear. Whose was it before you took it? What do they get from it? That's your answer. What you did to them is what I'll do to you. Ali shook violently. It clicked. Even if he obeyed every word this man said, he wouldn't make it out alive. Hope was gone. Even the thought of resisting felt impossible. Shan sliced open Andy's chest cavity, took one look inside, and exhaled. Whoa, dragon's breath, not bad. Dragon's breath was an artificial lung model originally designed for early-gen cyber athletes. It mimicked the avian-style air sac system. Air kept flowing through even during exhalation, unlike mammalian lungs where airflow pauses between cycles. No wonder dinosaurs could run like freight trains, he muttered. But seriously, dragon's breath? Sounds like a knockoff anime weapon. What's with that naming sense? Sarcasm aside, he pulled the internal battery pack from a corpse. The fights against Gilead and the welfare officer had drained him dry, and the donkey drone carrying spares was still MIA. With Yuki still plugged into his power source, he was running dangerously low. That's when he looked up. One hand slapped Ali's elbow, the other steered Andy's bike sideways with his staff. Signal received. The donkey drone had finally made it. Miles away, Grand Dog crushed a tiny flare underfoot. The metal battery had combusted from a heat trigger, another decoy mine. That's when it hit him. The man known as Sean was no amateur. These traps weren't meant to kill, just to broadcast a faint signal upon disturbance. A seasoned warrior's way of tracking his own blind spots, subtle, efficient, and just loud enough to say, I know you're coming. Every spot with a scent had a trap waiting for it. Sean made sure of that. Grand Dog followed the subtle chain of disturbed dust. 3 small mines triggered along a zigzag path that resembled a sine wave. He slowed down, nose to the ground like the trained bloodhound he was. A trail, footprints beside 2 distinct sets of motorcycle tire marks. .1 walker. 2 riders. But then, nothing. The human tracks vanished. Wind and sand had erased the rest. Was the lone walker captured by bikers? Or did he steal their bikes? Grand Dog wasn't sure. Ahead, bloodstains. He sniffed. Not Shan's. So whoever was walking probably survived. The blood wasn't his. Grand Dog cracked a grin and sprinted along the tire trails, picking up speed. And as the first light broke over the dunes, Sean finally exhaled. Sean glanced at the kid lying in the dirt, half dead but still hanging on. Phew. Lucky I dabble in battlefield surgery. Seriously though, why do I know how to do this stuff? Who am I? Andy's cyber lung had been transplanted into Yuki's chest. The blood packs, water, and emergency rations scavenged from the 2 bikes were now keeping the kid alive. Even better, the hunter seemed to have taken the bait. After the first decoy mine triggered, the 4th and 6th went off too. The pursuer must have thought Sean was running in a panic, when in reality, he'd just been chasing his own tail. That misdirection bought Sean the time to perform surgery. Half a dusty carpet became a makeshift tent. Scalpel, a utility dagger, sutures, stripped copper wire. Welcome to the desert ER. On the 3rd day, Yuki stirred. Hey kid, you actually made it. Sean smiled, exhausted. You should thank whatever mad scientist patched your DNA. If you were still just a plain OL Homo sapiens, you'd be brain dead by now. Homo sapiens. Yuki murmured, still dazed. Homo sapiens. That's the official name for the old kind of human, Sean said, staring at the fading sky. Genus, Homo. Species, sapiens. If we're going by the same rules, we'd probably be called Homo vexillus now. Not that it means much anymore. Haven't even seen a blade of grass in weeks. Yuki didn't really understand, but Shan's tone sounded like a joke, so he tried to smile. Tried and failed. Tears rolled down his cheeks. Ichin and NGHH. He reached up with his new cybernetic arm to wipe his face. Too strong. It scraped a line of blood under his eye. Hey, Shan caught his wrist. That arm's for staying alive, not gouging your face open. I know, Yuki whimpered. But my mom, she's really gone. Shan let go, resting a hand on the kid's head. Yulia, she was a real one. Brave as hell. Don't run from this, Yuki. Shan's voice turned solemn. Remember this pain. Carve it into your soul. So what happens now? Yuki sniffled. Shan stared at him. That depends on you. You could blame me if that makes it easier. Maybe if I'd left sooner, your mother wouldn't have gotten caught up in this. No, Yuki suddenly shouted. I saw him. I know exactly who killed her. Shan's eyes sharpened. Good. If you've stopped lying to yourself, then you're ready to walk this road. Rest up. We're going after them. Yuki looked down at himself. There was barely anything left of his original body. Arms, legs, organs, even his lungs were replaced. But Master, the man who killed her, he's already dead. Shan nodded slowly. Yeah, he's paid the price. Then who's left? The gang. The system. This whole rotten world. Shan's voice turned heavy. Now that you felt that pain, make sure no one else ever does. That's what revenge means when you're a hero. Step 1, wipe out Gerard's base. Shan's voice was calm, but firm. Yuki nodded, still a bit nervous. I've absorbed Leaf's memory. You know, that big guy with the staff, Shan explained. And recently, I cracked parts of Gerard's chip. I know exactly where their hideout is and how to get in. But Yuki hesitated. There's probably a lot of them, right? Shan smirked. Yeah, a lot of nobodies. Numbers mean nothing when they've got no discipline. Real martial skill can tear through that kind of chaos. That lit a fire in Yuki's eyes. Shan crouched down, leveling his gaze. But listen, kid, if you're serious about this path, there are rules. And before I truly train you, you need to follow every one of them. If you can't, I'll find a safe city and drop you off. No shame in that. Yuki nodded hard. Say it, Master. First, what I say, you do. No questions. We're walking the edge here. One mistake, and we both die. Second, yeah, we're getting revenge. But for the next 4 years, you won't kill anyone. I don't care who they are. Unless I'm not around, and they come at you first. Then you survive. Got it. Yuki froze, then dropped his head. But he couldn't hold it in. Why? Why can they kill and destroy, but I can't even fight back? Shan slammed a hand on his head. Stop. Listen carefully. No one has the right to judge life and death. Only the law does. But didn't you say the law is just another form of oppression? Shan cut him off. I said the law can be a weapon of oppression, not that it always is. Taking a life shouldn't come easy. We draw our blades not because it's right, but because there's no better option. If you don't understand the weight of that choice, you're no better than the scum we're hunting. Yuki clenched his jaw, backslash, then gave a small nod. Good. Shan stood tall, and with a hiss, a small panel opened on his armor. Shan pulled out 3 chips from the hidden compartment and tossed them to Yuki. Your neural firewall has a port, right? Plug them in. Yuki nodded, opened a hatch on his skull, and slotted them in one by one. Normally, I'd wait till we're somewhere safe to teach you this stuff, Shan muttered, checking the fit. But we're heading straight into enemy turf. You'll be stationed outside their base. I need you alive till I get back. Yuki's eyes lit up. So, combat skills? Can I finally fight back against those thugs? Shan snorted. In your dreams. At best, these'll help you not die in the first minute. 3. He activated the transmitter. With a thought, the neural interface kicked in. Backslash, initializing. Spacing thread assist mode. Whoa, what's happening? My vision's all messed up. Yuki shouted. Relax. That's not a glitch. Shan waved it off. This is how fighters see the world. You'll get used to it, slowly. See that white ring? That's my attack range. Now, take a swing at me. Yuki nodded, clenched his fist, and stepped forward to throw a punch. As Yuki's punch entered the glowing white circle, Shan's hand twitched, light tap on the wrist. Instant deflection. He tried again. Same result. Every time his fist crossed the boundary, it got swatted away like a fly. So, any idea how to avoid getting countered? Sean asked, not even moving his feet. Yuki scratched his head, pointed behind Sean. That gap over there? The two white arcs shifted slightly, forming a complete sphere around Shan's upper body. Okay, then maybe your legs? Yuki crouched low, aiming a strike at Shan's shin. But the moment he moved, a red glow flashed around Shan's leg. Shan's foot swept low, stopping dead right next to Yuki's cheek. This red zone? That's where my leg strike hits, he said calmly. Translation, your head's already gone. Earlier, I only disabled the other assist lines, Sean said calmly. You were seeing just my hand range. Doesn't mean the rest of me is harmless. Now, he gestured to his hip. Check out this gun. Instantly, the lines on his limbs faded. The short-barreled handgun he took from Andy lit up. A glowing line extended from the muzzle, starting dark and fading into pale. It looked like a laser pointer on steroids. A couple of dotted lines followed beside it, and another line connected the gun back to his wrist. Sean bent down and picked up the steel baton dropped by Ollie. The gun lines blinked out. A new set appeared, outlining a full circular range around Shan's body, the staff strike zone. Your mission, Sean said, is to keep yourself out of any danger zones. If you overlap with any attack lines, you're screwed. Yuki blinked. Wait, Master, do you really see all this stuff when you fight? Sean shook his head. Nah, it's just a tool. Helps you build muscle memory for spacing and timing. Once it's burned into your instincts, you won't need the visuals anymore. Old school fighters had no implants, but they could sense spacing and rhythm just fine. What you're doing now, you're training that same instinct, just with software. You've got 1 hour. Learn how to read your field. Then we ride. Z Group's camp won't raid itself. Shan's prep started with charging up. The bikes he snagged? Dual-powered beasts, solar, and ethanol. Since raiders don't exactly get to plug into the town square, both bikes had mini solar panels for daytime trickle charge. But when it's time to dip, ethanol engines kick in like jet boosters. Next came coolant refill. To defend against iron mist, that cyber killer aerosol, he'd cranked his body pressure up with vaporized coolant. Basically, made his whole system a pressurized canister. Nasty stuff like that, or nanocarbon fibers, can fry your circuits in a blink. Thankfully, barely anyone knows how to use iron mist properly these days. Sean remembered, it wasn't random dust, but razor-thin, blade-shaped metal particles. Magnetize it, suspend it with precision, and boom, you've got metal chi. A high-tech aura that tanks lasers and EMPs. Sometimes it even bites back. Armor checked. Now, for his legs, those synthetic muscle fibers were wearing down. After a few system tests, he estimated 1% had torn already. That's still enough to raid one more hideout. But that missing finger? Still gone. Blown off by Gryad's bullet. He could have swapped Impalus's steel knuckles, but nope. His upper body's too light. Equipping those would have been like mounting tank cannons on a shopping cart. Powerful, but suicide. Sean insisted on raiding the Z Gang's base first. Sure, justice and peace sounded nice, but let's be real, it was all about resources. The kind of elite combat gear in no scrapyard town could offer, that base probably had more than enough. He loaded the stripped parts from the welfare officer into Donkey's cargo bed, then integrated Gryad's drone sextant into the NAV system. No more getting lost like a rookie. Coordinates read 37 degree 16 N, 89 degree 13 W. Totally unfamiliar. Might have been where he first woke up, or maybe just another dead zone in his memory. Next, he tore off a chunk of the black tarp and wrapped Yuki up like a tactical burrito. Master, are you really going to hang me off the bike like this? Came the muffled voice. Shut up. Use neural input. If you can't handle basic silent comms, don't even talk about revenge. Understood, Master. Sean found some ridiculous-looking biker ornament, strapped it to his head. Then he threw on Andy's old jacket and gave a remote command to Ali's cyborg body, making it sit on the other bike like a half-dead goon. Mission disguise complete. Xiangshan wasn't planning a full frontal assault. This time, he was going undercover. After all, Ali and Andy were low-level grunts from Z Organization. Not exactly surprising. Z was the top dog in this region, and even the scrapyard town fell under their reach. These bandits had no access to government satellites and couldn't afford wired networks. So Goliard's death? Still a secret. And those two dead thugs? Already forgotten. Xiangshan was going to ride that silence straight into their base. Attacking head-on would be suicide. The stronghold was practically buried, with barely anything on the surface to avoid satellite strikes. Anything too exposed on the surface? Instant orbital strike. Ever heard of rods from God? It's basically space junk with terminal velocity. No one survives that. That's why bandit bases like this are buried underground, webbed with hidden tunnels and rotating exits that shift locations every few weeks. One wrong leak and government kill squads show up. But Goliard, the now-dead boss, had the full layout. Xiangshan planned to use that to slip inside. Z organization had about 200 members. Around a third of them were disposable raiders who rotated shifts scavenging the wilds. The real threat lay in the elite units, the shock troops, and suicide squads, who trained full-time inside the base. 50 of them were fully augmented combatants, and they rarely left the compound. Only two stood out: the second-in-command Little Poison Bug and third-in-command Steel Vulture Daniel. Still, Xiangshan wasn't sweating it. With each step, his memories were sinking back, and with them, the martial techniques sealed his past life were unlocking, one by one. Meanwhile, every combat style Xiangshan had absorbed was being broken down and rewritten inside his mind, starting with Will's beast-mimicking bio-fist technique, Hollis's armored steel fists, Ronconi's four-core blade dance, Leaf's SSC triple-style staff technique, even Goliard's Tiger Howl Lance art, his Cloud Veil drone formation, and the ridiculous Apocalypse tank fist, not to mention the welfare officer's infamous tin drone kill array. All of it now his, and as these foreign martial arts fused into him, they sparked something deeper, memories buried beneath layers of code and muscle. Augment or not, tech-based or internal, Xiangshan was no longer the half-broken wanderer from 2 weeks ago. Along the way, he noticed something strange. The ground cover, moss, weeds, even shrubs, they were all black. No green in sight, just dark, photosensitive organisms like something grown in a lab or mutated by war. Whatever apocalypse had reshaped this land, nature didn't come out unscathed. Soon, he spotted one of the hidden tunnel entrances, just where Goliard's stolen map said it would be. From a distance, the entrance looked like nothing more than a big chunk of rock, but it was hollowed out from the inside, a cleverly disguised hatch. With his cybernetic strength, Xiangshan flipped it open with ease, revealing a dark tunnel beneath. He threw in 2 bikes, 1 fake corpse, and a burrito-wrapped disciple, then dropped it himself and hit the throttle. Cameras began flashing by as he sped down the tunnel. These weren't your average security cams. They were pure optical receivers, no digital uplink, no remote access, completely unhackable. The feed traveled through a closed-loop cable straight to the base's internal monitor room, where a very specific group handled the footage. These handlers were near pure flesh. No limb mods, no neural enhancements, just one basic chip in the brain. The goal? Immunity. So even if someone tried to hijack them through visual spells or screen-bound runes, they wouldn't respond. At their desks sat mechanical alarm triggers, old-school levers and gears that didn't rely on any network. Xiangshan had read about this oddity in the memories he'd scanned. Some Greenwood clans had ditched electronics in favor of differential engines. Analog tech, pure hardware logic. Not that they were unhackable, just inconvenient. To hijack a differential engine, you'd have to jam specific cogs in motion. And that's just one of the defenses this base had cooked up. The underground layout of Zeorg wasn't some basic tunnel, it was a full-on maze. Forks within forks, twists inside turns. Worse, the camera signal cables were deliberately misleading. Some lines veered into decoy paths, and the floors had fake tracks laid out. Footprints, tire marks, the works. A few of those dead ends, rigged with EMP mines. Iron Mist could buffer some of the shock, but not if it explodes right under your boots. No time to react. You just tank it. Xiangshan spotted a blind corner with no cameras. He jerked the bike and dumped his student off the back like luggage. Yuki tried to speak. Xiangshan slapped a hand over his mouth. Echoes, idiot. One sound here bounces across half the grid. Yuki nodded, switching to internal text. So now what? Xiangshan tilted his chin toward a dark passage. You hide. That branch connects to 2 patrol routes, but no one uses it. Too many blind bends. Get past the first corner and stay there. Do not move unless I say so. Xiangshan was now within a few hundred meters of the Z organization's base, just enough to catch a faint signal from their server. That was his cue. Once inside the signal's range, he could unleash his internal system. He turned back and messaged Yuki. Remember, if you're spotted, use the auxiliary lines to escape. Wrong, he corrected himself. You tell them this. You're the disciple of a wandering warrior, and your master's already inside their base. Then say you might be carrying a parasite. If they want a cure, they better take you alive. Yuki hesitated. That kind of feels like betrayal. It's called strategy, not betrayal. Xiangshan cut him off. Now shut up and hide. Once he confirmed Yuki was out of visual range, he nodded to himself. Good. Stay hidden. I'll be back, with company. Xiangshan gave a slight nod. Both bikes revved up in sync and sped toward the enemy compound, the corpse in disguise in tow. A few minutes later, they rolled up to a dusty open lot, the parking zone of the Z organization. Around the edges stood weapon racks, neatly lined with blades, staffs, and heavy metal clubs. Beneath them sat 3 battered ammo crates, loaded with standard calibers. A few low-tier thugs were hunched in a corner, lost in their own world. Turns out, they were playing Tetris on some hacked-together retro consoles. In this era, gaming had become one of the few cultural relics from the old world, ironically useful. Some theories even claim that early-stage martial arts training activated brain patterns similar to gaming: prediction, timing, emotional regulation. But no one dared download random software anymore. Just a few lines of row code could carry a digital curse. Most games here were handcrafted by the martial artists themselves during internal skill training. Legendary game mechanics were passed down like sacred texts, recreated over and over by each generation of inner force cultivators. One of the guards noticed them and lazily waved in their direction, thinking it was just Ali and a returning squad member. Xiangshan casually threw his arm around Ali's shoulder, waving back at the gang while triggering a voice clip he'd secretly recorded. Ali's laugh, slightly processed to scrub out the background noise. It wasn't perfect, but it sounded real enough for a lazy glance. One of the guys yelled out, "Yo, come get wrecked in a match. Loser downs a shot of ethanol." Xiangshan just shrugged it off, muttering, "Nah, I'm good." Ali's corpse was holding up, but barely. The stiff, janky movements were starting to show. Without full biomod integration, the cheap control chip couldn't simulate human behavior for long. And Xiangshan wasn't at full power yet. If the server wasn't such a joke, he wouldn't even risk this level of sync. Getting exposed now would mean a mob of low-level martial goons and no time to plant his venom traps. Luckily, the thugs were too wrapped up in their gaming to notice anything weird. With the heat off, Xiangshan casually grabbed some supplies and made his way toward the clan's main storage depot. Every time the crew returned from a raid, they'd dump their loot at the depot, just part of keeping the operation running. Nothing about that would raise suspicion. Xiangshan's synthetic eye quietly scanned the ceiling, tagging every camera, mapping their range and rotation angles. He cross-referenced the data with the memories of Goliath and Leaf, then kept moving, one step at a time, dragging Ali's corpse through the dim tunnel. Footsteps. 2 Z thugs were heading straight toward him. He adjusted his pace just enough to make sure they crossed paths in the darkest patch of the corridor. One of them squinted at the stiff, off-kilter movement of Ali and at Xiangshan's unfamiliar face. Suspicion was building. Xiangshan didn't flinch, just walked past like he belonged. One of the thugs started to turn around, just to double-check. Maybe Ali overdosed again? Crack. A sharp snap rang out, sounded like a silent shot. Xiangshan had snatched the steel rod from Ali's body and flicked his wrist with lethal force. He twisted, palms flat against the backs of their skulls, and unleashed a high-frequency pulse. Spinal columns shattered, neural cores scrambled, brains liquefied. Instant takedown. No time wasted. He dumped the supplies he'd been carrying and vanished into the corridor before their bodies even hit the ground. After snapping the necks of the two patrolmen, Xiangshan didn't stick around to admire his work. He knew it wouldn't be long before someone noticed the silence. Even with blind spots in the surveillance grid, patrol rotations would fill in the blanks soon enough. To anyone watching the cameras, all they'd see was a flicker of silver dashing from one feed to another. Too fast, too clean. Then he felt it. The signal was close. He'd entered range. The heart of the operation, Z-Base Central Server, was right ahead. Predictably sloppy, just like he expected from a gang of thugs. Their firewall was a joke. He sliced through it like paper, tore into the core, rewrote protocols, backdoor sealed, done. Instant root access. Surveillance feeds? Hijacked. Logs? Downloaded. Data? Cross-referenced and indexed. The server was now infected, under his control. The game was his to play. This place was a forge. Metal extraction vats, fermentation tanks, high-temperature furnaces, industrial, but crude. The humming underground current? That was their power source, an underground river turned generator. In any real fight, the goal isn't to kill the fighters. It's to cut off their orders. Blind the eye, mute the voice, and the whole organization falls apart like a marionette with its strings cut. And now, it was time to make some noise. A controlled detonation rocked the underground parking lot. The hidden bomb inside, the motorcycle ignited, taking out racks of weapons and crates of ammo. As predicted, patrol units rushed toward the tunnel, only to trigger the trap. Iron dust burst from the corpses, razor-sharp aerosol shredding flesh and circuitry. They never made it to the alarm. The thrill of it, turning chaos into calculation, rewriting the unknown into his own blueprint. It was intoxicating, like hunting gods with your bare hands. Elsewhere in the compound, Z-Base second-in-command, known as Little Venom, muttered, "Any deeper into this delusion and I might start thinking I'm the hero here." Truth be told, Little Venom wasn't exactly the hard-working type, but he got lucky, real lucky. Years ago, just another slum rat, he stumbled across the corpse of a martial hero. On the body, he found a magnetically linked cloth relic, embedded with data, one connection, and an entire martial art manual downloaded into his system. Since then, he'd obsessed over the mysterious files, rumored to be a piece of some new world protocol. Eventually, after killing a neighbor in a petty squabble, he fled into the wild and joined Z-Base, earning his infamy through sheer brutality. But Little Venom was lazy to his core. He didn't even bother mastering the Cloud Veil drone formation. He just tossed it to Gilead to practice instead. The only time he ever got excited was when he could infect someone with a parasite or dismantle a seasoned martial artist. 2 years ago, a mysterious visitor calling himself the messenger of the Leech God brought something even more addictive, a corrupted hard drive titled Reforge the World. Since then, Venom had been completely obsessed. Suddenly, a subordinate burst into the room. "Boss, something's wrong. You need to see this. The base is collapsing. Everything we built, it's all going down." Venom froze. Who? Who infiltrated us? A voice echoed through the chamber, laced with sarcasm. Who am I? Damn, starting with an existential question already. Let's just say, I'm your neighborhood Avenger. Cut the crap. Wait, the boss has been missing for days. You're that Sean guy, aren't you? Who the hell are you? Honestly, the voice replied, calm as ever. I've been asking myself the same thing. But here's what I do know. Your main server's under my control, and most of your comms are toast. Next move's pretty simple. Wipe out every last piece of trash. Before he came here, he still held onto a sliver of hope. Maybe some rookies hadn't killed yet. He couldn't pick them out one by one, but planned to hold back just in case. But after pulling the files from the Gryad server, the hope vanished. Worst part, the blue steel vulture was already gone. Not that it mattered. Patience wasn't really his thing. He'd just kill his way through and see who was left standing. With a powerful leap, Xiangshan soared back onto the steel beam above. As he rushed forward, a loudspeaker crackled to life. Brothers, he's in the surveillance room. Bang! Xiangshan silenced it with a single, crushing blow. At that moment, Every remotely controlled light across the facility shut down in perfect sync. Raising his walkie-talkie, he said coldly, "Forest warriors, you're surrounded." Chaos broke out instantly. Gunfire, screaming, curses. A few gang leaders rallied their men and charged toward the surveillance room. Xiangshan clicked off the walkie-talkie and smirked. Damn, sometimes I even impress myself. Meanwhile, Xiangshan had already closed in on a cybernetic brute, heavily modified but still too slow. With a swift twist, he spun the cyborg around. Just 0.4 seconds. Before it could react, its core was gone. How's it feel, boys, getting owned by raw violence? Now, Xiangshan had full visual control of the base. Nothing escaped him. The mob charged blindly. Maybe a few sensed something was off, but Xiangshan's cocky smirk sealed their fate. Idiots, he thought coldly. The smart move? Send in a few close combat elites to pin him down, then line up the gunners. But these thugs thought, mobbing beats martial arts, forgetting one thing. Mobs need coordination. Charging all at once. Just a meat grinder. Maybe I should pour more fuel on the fire. Seriously, why am I so damn good at this? Who the hell was I, really? Gliding through the chaos like a stroll in the park, Xiangshan hummed into his walkie-talkie. Who am I? Am I not unique? Maybe I'm not here at all. His voice floated playfully through the madness, mockery wrapped in melody. With his only remaining hand, Xiangshan grabbed the center of a staff, yanked hard. The wielder stumbled forward, 3 steps too many, right into the crossfire. 3 bullets punched through his neck. He collapsed, screaming. Out cold. Look, the fakers. Blinding us with lies, the breakers of us all. In a heartbeat, 14 bodies had already piled up at Xiangshan's feet. Out of my way, a thunderous voice roared. A tank-bodied warrior rolled in, lower half replaced with treads, upper half built like a freight train. A row of vibrating, high-frequency blades gleamed on his chassis. He charged full force, swinging a massive axe in a wide arc, trying to cut off all escape. Xiangshan leapt behind him with ease, humming, "Oh, it's useless." Another enemy came diving from above, gun raised midair, unloading a rain of bullets like a steel net. Xiangshan dropped low, sliding on his knees, back arched like a willow in the wind. Bullets zipped past, grazing air. Before the shooter landed, Xiangshan was already beneath him, palming the ground, flipping up, hooking the man's arm with one leg, then striking his neck with the other in a brutal arc. Crack! The fighter's head twisted sideways. He dropped, done. No pause. Xiangshan snatched the gun still strapped to the corpse's arm. One fluid lift, one clean pull of the trigger. Enemies flew backward like bowling pins. Finally, amidst that eerily calm melody, someone snapped. He's not human. He's not human. No one fights like this. This is insane. Ha ha ha, it's a glitch. This has to be VR. Second boss, cut the sim already. Panic spread like a virus. Fast, feral, and contagious. Screw this, I'm out. One bandit broke ranks and bolted. The fakers are all sick at heart, their faces hiding their fear. The calmer Xiangshan looked, the more they lost their nerve. No one dared face him head-on. Whoa, whoa, why the rush? Xiangshan knocked out a lunging ambusher with a casual elbow, brushed off his jacket, and radioed in, "I'm just saying, you're running straight into worse trouble ahead. Nobody listens to good advice anymore. I need to get out." That was the only thought racing through Little Poison Bug's mind. There was no beating this guy. This wasn't just a fighter. He was a battlefield surgeon, dismantling them with surgical precision. And one-on-one, no chance. Not a soul in this fortress could take him. Even Leaf and Gryad were already down. Most of his so-called elites were still poisoned. Useless. No way Poison Bug would try detoxing the others. Leaf's final report was clear. Boomfist Koei got wrecked in 1 second. And Poison Bug, just a little stronger. Taking that guy on? Instant death. He jumped off his broadcast platform and bolted straight to the training hall, the one he shared with the boss, where they trained in demonic sect arts. The place had a mechanical combo lock. Solid. Unhackable. He punched in the code, flipped the breaker. Steel gate rumbled open. He didn't wait. Just as he turned, SCRECH, that sound. He knew it. Subsonic. A kill strike was coming. No choice. He spun around, fists up. A punch came flying in. He met it head-on. He pumped extra force into the clash, hoping the recoil would launch him toward the escape tunnel. But the attacker shifted midair. What was a punch became a full-on slam. BM slammed to the ground. Then, crack, a kick sent him flying back away from the gate. The enemy didn't chase. Instead, like clockwork, he flicked something into the gate. Poison Bug's vision was still clear. He saw it all. This guy was no grunt. He was a shock trooper, gunpath, demolitions expert. And what he just threw? A string of remote detonated landmines. Xiang Shan hurled the headless corpse, landmines still strapped on, straight into the tunnel. Then turned to Poison Bug. Click. He hit the switch. The steel gate started closing. That was it. Game over. He'd used the outlaw's neural chip to trigger the mines, collapsed the whole damn escape route. With nowhere left to run, Poison Bug dropped into a stance and launched a desperate flying kick. Xiang Shan casually sidestepped and shoulder-checked him 10 meters across the hall. Both feet off the ground. No vector boost. That's your martial art? Pathetic. Boom. Poison Bug slammed into a glass vat. A wave of rot and chemicals spilled out. Xiang Shan glanced at the mess. Broke something. My bad. I'll pay for it. Poison Bug froze. Hey, that jar? He knew it. A preserve brain. His first test subject. Back when his skills sucked, and one touch to the temporal lobe ruined everything. Still, he'd kept it. His first success. And now this guy wanted to pay for that. What the hell do you want? Poison Bug snarled. Same as you, Xiang Shan said, like it was nothing. Steal stuff. Blow off steam. Then kindly offered him a hand up. Poison Bug snapped, threw a punch. Xiang Shan flicked his wrist, just once. Poison Bug lost balance, stumbled. Snap! Xiang Shan caught his chin and twisted. His spine broke. The body dropped like a puppet with cut strings. Xiang Shan cupped his limp head, tilted it gently. Take a look. All the sick stuff I've done. Around them, brains in jars, some hooked to wires. Some floating in blood-red fluid, pulsing with twitching organs. Closer look? Those brains were altered. Some had their myelin stripped, replaced with electrodes. Others had neural paths rerouted like spaghetti code. And it wasn't new. According to Gryad's memories, the experiments had been going on for 2 years. Failures didn't mean death, just suffering. The lucky ones? Still alive. Poison Bug's toys. The rest? Recycled into bioparts. Xiang Shan gave a soft sigh. Breaking your little collection? Yeah, I kind of feel bad about that. But hey, I did promise to replace it. So I will. 1-to-1. He leaned in, whispering near Poison Bug's audio unit. Want to know the fun part? You already know the replacement. That brain? It's the one you played with the most. Surprise. Didn't see that coming, did you? You sick freak. Poison Bug's voice trembled. That's just. Xiang Shan cut him off, twisting his head a full 180 degrees, lining up their mechanical eyes. One last question, he said coldly. Any chance those wrecked brains can be fixed? No. There's no precedent. That's impossible. Precedent? Xiang Shan scoffed. Don't care about precedent. I want a theory. A spark. Something. Because if you do remember something, I'll test it on you first, before I try it on the others. This is your one shot. Don't waste it. Little Poison Bug trembled that he got it now. No words, no tricks. Xiang Shan would pay him back. All of it. He started crawling, inch by inch, dragging himself with his chin. His neck was a mess, flesh torn, metal bent. Every move screamed pain, but he didn't stop. Finally, he reached IT an automated reassembly rig. Point one last shot at survival. Start. Password. 1587 AG, he rasped. Mechanical arms dropped down, clamping onto his skull, lifting him into the air. More arms burst from the rig, spinning into motion. Wrenches, clamps, magnetic grips, ripping his cybernetic frame apart. Piece by piece, from a sealed drawer, a new chassis emerged. This is it. Last chance before he comes back. He clung to that single thought. Then, the lights cut out. Darkness, silence, frozen midair, nothing but a head now. Poison Bug understood. This was Gryad's room. And Gryad had higher level access. His jaw clenched. He growled into the void. Fine. Then you get nothing. He sent a neural command: overwrite, wipe all stored data, drown it in garbage code. But then, for the first time in his life, a new message blinked across his synthetic eyes. Error. In the dark, resistance shattered, dignity gone. The proud warrior, now just ahead, finally cried. Real tears. From custom-grown synthetic glands. Ugh. Aowa, just kill me. Kill me now. If you're a hero, do it. Finish me. That scream, raw, hopeless, ripped through every synced receiver. Anyone listening felt it. A chill straight to the soul. So when Xiangshan walked out of the tunnel, only one grunt, a barely modded rookie, dared lift his gun. Xiangshan didn't flinch. He raised his arm. Bang. The grunt's head exploded on the spot. One hand gripped a massive bundle slung across his back. The other held an assault rifle that he didn't look at anyone else, just walked straight toward Yuji. Yuji froze. Then, eyes teared up, master. Smack. Xiangshan slapped him clean across the head. Yuji flew back, hit the ground hard. And master, he stammered, stunned. Xiangshan stood over him. Do you know why I hit you, kid? Yuji lowered his head instantly. I left my post. Wrong, Xiangshan said, voice cold. Eyes sharper than ever. Xiangshan sighed. I'm not your father. I'm not going to scold you like your mom would for stepping up. But that's something you need to get. A hero never regrets standing up for someone. But you did screw up. Twice. He pointed to the woman's lifeless body. If you really wanted to save her, there was a window. Back in the tunnel. You were just around the corner, safe, unseen. All you had to do was say the line I taught you. You've been poisoned. Your only shot at survival is taking me to my master for the antidote. You say that, there's a chance. Maybe both of you make it out alive. Tears streamed down Yuji's face. It's my fault. I'm sorry, master. I didn't save her. Xiangshan placed a hand on his shoulder. Save her? What are you talking about? You didn't kill her. They did. They're standing right there. Yuji's voice cracked, rage boiling up. Master, kill them. Kill those bastards. They always do this. They killed my mom. They killed her too. They deserve to die. Xiangshan's voice dropped. Cold. And that is why I hit you. We're heroes, not outlaws. He snorted just once. If you want justice, say it loud. Stand up. Let them hear what righteousness really means. That wasn't the right thing to say back there, Xiangshan said firmly. If you claim to walk the path of justice, then speak it with pride. Look your enemies in the eye and tell them what righteousness truly means. With that, he straightened his back and turned to face the forest bandits. I'm a hero, and for the sake of my disciple's mother, Lady Yulia, may she rest in peace. For the nameless woman over there, and for all the innocent people you've brutalized, I swear to drag you into the same pit of fear and violence. You'll die, so that your sins may be paid in full. As he finished, Xiangshan suddenly whipped his arm around, flinging the massive cloth bundle into the air. 12 long rifles shot upward, glinting like steel serpents mid-flight. It was only then that the 14 surviving bandits snapped out of their trance, the screams of their lieutenant still echoing in their minds. Bastard, shouted little Edward. The entire group raised their weapons. In that moment, Yuji's vision shifted, his perception elevating to a level he didn't even know existed. He saw it clearly. 14 people, 20 guns, all aiming at once. The trajectories overlapped, forming a web of crimson death. And yet, Xiangshan simply hummed a tune, spun slightly on his heel, and stepped backward with the grace of a dancer. At that very moment, Xiangshan snatched 2 rifles out of the dozen floating mid-air, aimed, and fired. The gunfire erupted almost simultaneously. 2 low-tier cyborg runts had their heads blown apart, collapsing before they even realized what hit them. As for the rest, their bullets struck empty space, just ahead of where Xiangshan stood. Yuji saw it clearly. Every crimson trajectory line converged on a spot in front of Xiangshan. In that split second, Xiangshan had removed the limiters of his parasite-based system, wiping out all internal delays. But little Edward didn't know that. Earlier, he had shared the 0.3-second delay compensation parameter with the entire squad. None of them questioned it. So they all fired at where Xiangshan was predicted to be. Only the two unenhanced grunts aimed directly at his current position. But their trigger speed? No match for cybernetic reflexes. They were dead before their fingers finished the motion. Without missing a beat, Xiangshan tossed away the rifles he'd just fired, kicked upward midair, and drew two more from the floating arsenal above. Damn it, little Edward finally realized. Their numbers meant nothing. He started evasive maneuvers. His body was almost entirely cybernetic, except for his legs below the knees, replaced with high-speed wheels. That gave him superior agility and the ability to launch powerful kicks. He moved in a wide arc, spinning and weaving like a whirlwind. Xiangshan hurled his rifles into the air once more, then dove low, slipping under two crisscrossing trajectory lines. His arms stretched wide, like the wings of a hunting eagle. He caught two rifles mid-fall and fired again without hesitation. Yuji stared in disbelief. Every step Xiangshan took wasn't just martial arts. It was art itself. Logically, with 20 guns aiming at him, there should have been no room to breathe. Even accounting for the miscalculation caused by the parasite delay, those crossfire lines weren't just for show. No, wait. Yuji suddenly realized something deeper. Xiangshan had been positioning himself in front of him and the baby the entire time. He wasn't just dodging freely. He was limiting his own movement. No matter what, he always stayed between the attackers and the innocents. Anyone who tried to go around him got shot before they could take the shot. If Yuji was stunned, then little Edward was drowning in despair. Xiangshan's aim, correction, and firing were flawless. He moved like a master of firearms. And yet, this gun master was using nothing but the cheap, mass-issued rifles meant for bottom-tier grunts. Why? Because this wasn't just combat. It was showmanship. A brutal display designed to crush hope. Just like the fear they had once instilled in civilians. This hero wasn't just strong. He was too strong. So strong that simply wiping them out instantly would have been unsatisfying. So he chose slow-firing weapons. Ones that left just enough room for doubt, for delusion. Gave them hope, and then crushed it piece by piece. As Xiangshan grabbed his next round of rifles, only 4 bandits remained. One finally snapped, tried to run, but got his spine blown apart by a single shot. Little Edward trembled. He turned and bolted, hoping his armor could tank a few rounds, while his wheel legs gave him the speed to escape. But Xiangshan tossed his rifle aside and launched forward, legs exploding with power stored all this time. Edward twisted his waist 180 degrees, firing in blind panic. But the gap was less than 10 meters now, the range where body beats bullet. Xiangshan crashed into him like a missile, shoulder first into his chest. Edward's balance shattered. He tumbled sideways, crashing to the ground. Little Edward tried to lift his right leg, attempting to stand, but Xiangshan simply tapped his knee with a light kick, just enough to destroy his balance again. Only then did Xiangshan gesture upward. .1 rifle drifted down, slow and deliberate, landing gently in his hand. Clack, clack, clack. The rest of the rifles finally hit the ground, echoing through the battlefield like the final notes of a funeral march. Please spare me," Edward whimpered. Xiangshan said nothing. When Edward tried to rise again, he stepped firmly on his shoulder, slamming him back down. Then he lowered the rifle, pressing the muzzle directly against Edward's cybernetic boom. The shot rocked the entire chassis. "Don't kill me. Just give me a..." Xiangshan calmly waited. The spent casing ejected with a quiet ping. And then, bang, the third shot landed. Little Edward finally stopped moving. The trauma was too much. He blacked out from the concussion. Xiangshan paused, his expression sharp. He tilted his head, listening, then, without hesitation, took 3 steps back. Da-da-da-da-da-da. A hail of bullets tore across the floor where he'd just been, kicking up a storm of dust and debris. Xiangshan looked up. Hovering above was blue steel vulture Daniel. Unlike most cyber warriors, Daniel's body resembled more of a flying war machine than a man. True to his name, the blue steel vulture could fly. His entire body resembled a triangular aircraft, The chassis was shaped to minimize electromagnetic reflection, and the underside was coated in a special blue-tinted stealth paint. His limbs weren't arms and legs. They were control surfaces, ailerons, and tail fins. And just moments ago, he had unleashed a burst of bullets at Xiangshan from afar. What the hell? Daniel was confused. He'd just gone out for recon and maybe some combat training. And when he came back, there was a lone warrior massacring his crew. So naturally, he did what anyone would do. He attacked. Daniel had perfect mastery over distance. His specialty? A sudden dive that closed the gap instantly, followed by a sharp pull-up once he reached within 30 meters. With that tactic, he was nearly unbeatable against close-range fighters. And now, he used that exact move again, diving in with precision. Xiangshan dodged expertly, his movements like a blur. But the closer Daniel got, the less time Xiangshan had to react. Suddenly, from the side, bullets rained down like a storm, pelting the area around Xiangshan. Daniel was forced to expand and morph his wings, widening their surface area to perform an emergency dodge that worked barely. A nearby rock shattered, revealing a hidden anti-air turret inside. Seriously? The organization's already desperate enough to pull this out. Xiangshan frowned. Not good. That kind of tech, it'll get satellite locked in seconds. As Daniel tried to pull away, a final tactical thought crossed his mind that IT would be his last. Thanks to the emergency maneuver, he was now hovering mid-air, 50 meters up with near-zero acceleration. He was just 200 meters away from the anti-air turret. And so, Xiangshan looked up as the blue steel vulture exploded in midair. He mimicked a firework with his mouth. Fui pop. Even though he didn't expect much, Xiangshan still went to check the crash site. An neural chip remained. Blue steel vulture. I was just wondering, what if his armor was too tough for rifles to pierce? He poked at a piece of twisted wreckage with his finger and sighed. Figured I'd let their own anti-air gun deal with it, just to be safe. So yeah, no chip. Makes sense. Silence fell over the wasteland once more. Only the soft cries of a little girl remained. Yuji looked at the fallen woman and the child, and murmured, "Her mom's gone. She must be heartbroken." Xiangshan glanced at him, then paused. "Don't project your own story onto never mind." Yuji looked up puzzled. "What?" Xiangshan replied. "I'm saying, don't let it eat you up. You're probably just thinking about your mother again." Yuji had missed the most chilling part of that final exchange. He assumed the girl was the daughter of the dead woman. But Xiangshan had heard something different. Through the comm line that he heard what little Edward whispered right before he died. "Dig a hole," Xiangshan said calmly. "We'll bury her." Yuji blinked. "Bury her? What does that mean?" "Right. I forgot your generation doesn't do that anymore." Xiangshan shook his head. "We dig a hole. Lay her body inside. Let nature take care of the rest. It's a small gesture of respect for what she once was, human." "You were noble, ma'am." Xiangshan bowed his head. "You have my respect. I'll make sure the child is taken somewhere safe." Before long, a shallow grave had been dug. Xiangshan gently lifted the woman's body. He laid her inside, then filled the grave. That be why the time he was done, the infant had cried herself into unconsciousness. Xiangshan shook his head and turned toward the passage. "Stay close this time." Yuji held the girl tight and followed behind. 10 minutes later, they reached one of the base's alternate entry points, this one much closer to the surface. But it wasn't the motorcycle garage. It was a storage facility. The main door was slightly ajar, and waves of oppressive heat poured from inside. Xiangshan waved them back. "You two still have skin. Don't go in. Wait here a few hours." Yuji craned his neck to peek inside. The floor was littered with bodies. Many of them were frozen in twisted, rigid poses. Whatever happened in there hadn't been quick. In truth, when Xiangshan first received word from Yuji, this was the very door he exited from. Now, once again, he charged through the scorching zone, casually fanning his own face like it was just a summer breeze. As he passed by the weapons vault, a cluster of grenades suddenly came flying out from inside. Xiangshan didn't even blink. He planted one leg, swung the other, bam, 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 and kicked the grenades right back. Then with a forceful push, he rolled across the floor, dodging the vault's direct line of fire. Boom, boom, boom. A chain of explosions rocked the base. sending tremors through the ground. "That's 4 more down," he muttered. "Let's see, what, 2 or 3 dozen left in here. Doesn't matter. They're no longer a threat." Another 10 minutes passed. Xiangshan returned to Little Poison Bug's lab. No words, no ceremony. He ordered the neural chip to eject from the skull, pulled it out, along with the storage core, and focused on reviewing the last 30 minutes of memory data. He sighed. Looks like he wasn't lying. That kind of mutilation, it really is irreversible. Without another word, he yanked the brain out, jam-packed it with unaligned flexible electrodes, and tossed it into the preservation fluid like trash. Just like that, the infamous Z organization was no more. Xiangshan walked up to another brain. Still functioning, maybe that he didn't know if there was any consciousness left, but this kind of irreversible modification only ever led to one thing: twisted, endless suffering. He placed his palm against the glass container and activated the ultrasonic pulse. High-intensity sound waves created rapid pressure differentials in the liquid. Tiny bubbles formed and collapsed in milliseconds, tearing through neural tissue like microscopic detonations. Within seconds, the brain inside melted, dissolving into the nutrient fluid. "I'm sorry," Xiangshan whispered to the liquefied remains. One by one, he released the rest. Then he turned to the device strapped to Boom Fist Kuei's back and crushed it with a single punch. That was Z Organization's collective memory. Damn it. Alone in the darkness, Xiangshan growled to himself. Technology has no will. Technology has no will. Damn it. Technology has no will. Watching the memories of Leaf and Gryad hadn't been enough. It didn't show him how twisted the forest bandits truly were. But after wiping out the entire fortress with his own hands, he understood fully. This world was a mistake, and the Green Forest, just one small shard of that greater, broken hole. Why am I this angry? Xiangshan muttered to himself. Strange, strange, strange. You bastard. He suddenly grabbed what was left of Little Poison Bug's body and slammed it against the wall with all his might. If a twisted person uses this kind of technology to record their twisted emotions, Xiangshan growled, then it becomes a kind of psychological HIV. You have to admit, HIV isn't actually that contagious. It needs fluid transmission. Pneumonia and hepatitis spread way faster, but it's still terrifying because it destroys the immune system itself. Once a person has it, there's almost no recovery. Cybernetic augmentation wasn't made to turn people into tools. It was meant to free humanity from illness, from birth defects, from limitations. Xiangshan clutched his head. No, even martial arts itself is a malformed technology. There are so many simpler, more effective military systems out there. Why did this world become one ruled by martial skill? Geek culture was born with open source ideals, with sharing, but the moment hacking evolved into internal energy level mastery, that spirit of sharing died. Where did it all go wrong? What era am I even from? What the hell happened while I was asleep? It wasn't until several hours later that Yuji saw Xiangshan again. He didn't know what had happened during that time. But based on their recent days together, he could tell from the way Xiangshan moved. Master didn't look happy. At all. Master, you look like you're in a great mood? As Xiangshan scavenged bits of scrap off the ground, he casually remarked, "Yeah, this place has more salvage than I expected. I think it's finally time for my next level upgrade." He kept sorting parts while he spoke. "Give me a few days. I'll come out of this reborn, with a body far stronger than before." After a moment, he stood up and said, "The donkey is here. You stay here and keep sorting the wreckage. Look for parts that didn't get completely shredded. Cybernetics, mech components, anything usable. This is part of Hero's basic training too. You know that if you don't understand the logic behind cybernetic design, you won't even hear the weight shift of your opponent's frame. And targeting weak points only works when you understand how the structure breaks." Yuji nodded, forcing down his discomfort as he began sifting through the mangled remains. Before long, Xiangshan returned, leading the donkey by its reins. "All right," he said, "we've got a lot of work ahead. New spine, new frame, fixing the arm, rebuilding the skull. Oh, and we're giving the donkey an upgrade too. All of it done in 4 days tops." Yuji flinched. 4 days? Can't we just relax and upgrade properly in this base? Xiangshan nodded. Exactly. There are still dozens of forest outposts out there, and I gotta wipe them out one by one that we don't have time to waste. It didn't take long for master and student to clean up most of the corpses scattered across the bandit fortress. The rest, Xiangshan said calmly. Leave them. All right, kid, time to see how the world really works. He tossed a pile of twisted metal into the furnace as he spoke. Yuji nodded silently, carrying the still unconscious, or possibly just sleeping, girl in his arms, following behind. Inside the training lab, once used by Gryad and Little Poison Bug, Xiangshan found a large refrigerated storage unit. He popped it open. Inside, scattered vials of unknown fluids and a dozen replacement spinal columns. What stood out most were 3 massive tube-shaped containers, each about 80 centimeters tall and 30 centimeters in diameter. Each one was divided into 3 layers. The outermost layer held a nearly colorless, transparent fluid. The middle, an opaque, milky substance. The innermost, impossible to see. Reverse messenger, suspension medium. Xiangshan took a slow breath. This is it. The reason you can't just plug someone else's spinal column into your body is because the nervous system and spinal cord have direct bioelectrical contact. Without compatibility, you get rejection. That's where the reverse messenger suspension medium comes in. Specifically, the middle layer in those triple-chambered tubes is a specialized enzyme meant to suppress rejection and allow partial adaptation. After all, when forest raiders go toe-to-toe with the government, other bandits, or freelance heroes, spine damage is common, and they needed a way to patch it fast. But even with a spinal replacement, you can't just plug in someone else's cord. The neural system's biological connection is incredibly complex. Any mismatch triggers a violent rejection. According to what Xiangshan extracted from Little Poison Bug's memories, using the reverse messenger suspension medium requires a precise procedure. First, the replacement spine is inserted into the middle layer of the triple-chambered cylinder through the top opening. Then, the recipient's tissue sample is placed into the outermost layer via the bottom inlet. The entire container is then placed into a thermal bath. You heat the water to a boil, then reduce it to 70 degrees C. That's when a chain reaction begins in the outer layer, amplifying the recipient's genetic material. Once that process is complete, the membrane between the first and second layers automatically ruptures. The newly amplified genetic material comes into contact with the enzymes and viruses in the second layer. That middle membrane was thermally insulated, kept almost freezing until the exact moment of release. Then, the final seal breaks. The third layer contains nutrients and hormones, which flood in just before the engineered viruses do. This last cocktail awakens the replacement spine, stimulating it for the final integration. Honestly, the first time Xiangshan learned about this, he was completely lost. Compared to the old-school tech he'd seen in other bandit strongholds, this felt like something out of cyberpunk fever dream. And yet, inside this so-called martial arts training lab, used by Little Poison Bug and Gryad, there was a full biotech setup, including, of course, a thermal bath. Xiangshan quickly configured the thermal settings for the bath and began the heating cycle. Then, he pointed toward the exit. Kid, that little girl's crying is getting out of hand. I'm about to get busy here. Don't want any distractions. Take her somewhere quieter. Yuki frowned. Can I just stay here and watch? Xiangshan shook his head. Leaving her alone in a blood-soaked lab like this? That's messed up. She's too young. What if something goes wrong? Stay with her. And don't worry, I left you some homework too. He tapped his chip, uploading another batch of math problems into Yuki's neural feed. Get better at this stuff. Once your math's solid, I'll teach you the next level. Now go train. Once Yuki left, Xiangshan stepped up to the maintenance rig. He linked his neural port to the rig with a data cable, activating his internal energy. Like a ghost through a circuit board, his consciousness infiltrated the machine's core OS. He was sweeping for traps, hidden death triggers, malware left behind by former users. Stuff like auto-kill if original owner is dead. In seconds, he established full control .6 surgical-grade robotic arms extended from above, their blades glinting under the lab light. They began slicing precisely along a fracture on his skull. That skull fracture? It was patched by scavengers in Junkyard Town, scanned, reforged from scrap metal, glued shut, and sealed with makeshift plates. Clumsy, uncomfortable. It was long overdue for a rebuild. Through the rig's high-resolution lenses, Xiangshan got his first clear view of the inside of his own skull. Just like the town mayor warned him, Xiangshan's brain cavity was a total disaster. Scorched circuits, warped modules, melted composites, an absolute mess. He never trusted anyone else to clean it, but with his prosthetic hands lacking fine touch, he couldn't do it himself either. Fortunately, the maintenance rig was precise enough for this delicate work. This time, he decided to overhaul his neural firewall. Bit by bit, the system peeled away the charred hardware. Outdated tissue and debris were flushed out. With the gunk cleared, his neural signals flowed faster. Sensory relays and feedback loops now worked with razor precision. Next came internal chip reconfiguration. He split his internal martial arts core to the left hemisphere and external martial arts to the right. Other modules, memory, vision, tactical analysis, were rearranged based on function. He'd need more expansion ports too. After all, he wasn't done raiding these outlaw tech hubs. And one more thing. It was finally time to retire this junkyard-grade body. 40 hours later, Xiangshan sat quietly, eyes closed. Just like the human brain isn't truly two separate halves, cyber martial arts wasn't just about limbs and chips. It was about balance, integration, harmony. Only then does true power begin. For warriors trained in the flash gong system, brain chips are usually wired this way. Inner force modules on the left hemisphere, outer force on the right. But that doesn't mean half a brain is enough. True combat always calls upon the full mind. Did I not explain this clearly enough earlier? That's why I'm reconfiguring the neural architecture. You got a problem with that? Sorry, Master. It's just the way you tied your skull shut with that wire. It kind of reminded me of your old teapot head days. Really? Still with the teapot jokes? That was a temporary fix. This time, I'm upgrading to a real skull cap. Anyway, welcome to Z Organization's smelting room. We've got biorefiners, a furnace, and what we came for, a 3D printer. Master, that machine over there, that's it, right? The printer? Yup. Old model, different spec, AS always, test first. Weird. I feel more familiar with this process. Yeah, familiar. These settings, I remember them all. Wait, what's happening? The display's glitching like crazy. It's turning into a mess of scrambled pixels. I'm unlocking extra layers of hidden data. A high-compatibility prosthetic framework, alloy specs for outer armor, and thermal weapon blueprints. TCH, this stuff deserves a deep dive. Honestly, their heat weapon designs seem even more advanced than what I remembered. I'll also need to reconfigure things to include Gilead's wireless transmitter and Paulus and Rafe battery units. That new spinal core? Every segment needs its own actuator. Because worst-case scenario, I might have to ditch the entire body and escape with just my spine and skull. Oh, and I'll need those extra parts for upgrading the donkey too. Damn, and that cursed skull casing's still on the to-do list. Meanwhile, elsewhere, Old Dog was still on the hunt. At first, he'd been following a clear, straight trail left behind by the warrior Xiangshan. But after a few days, something started to feel off. No matter how good Xiangshan is at covering his tracks, it's impossible that he left zero trace over several days. There wasn't even a hint of scent in the wind. That's just unnatural. My senses, both sight and smell, are top tier. And this wasteland, it has no terrain or wildlife that could mask a trail. Unless I lost him from the start, which means his path was never straight. He must have been searching for something in this area from the beginning. Damn it, what a humiliation. What the hell was he looking for? Could he have been expecting backup? But this entire zone is crawling with green forest thugs. Every hero and vigilante is tied up near Old Guanlu. No way someone else would be operating here. So, was he searching for an enemy? Days have passed. Even if there were any tracks left behind, the desert wind would have erased them by now. Tracking him the old-fashioned way? That's out of the question. If Xiangshan is a warrior who's lost his memory, then that cobbled-together prosthetic body from the town won't be nearly enough for him. In that case, He'd be desperate for a proper combat-grade body and access to professional maintenance gear. If it were me, where would I look for something like that? Missile Chain, Gryad died by his hand not long ago. Green Forest strongholds are usually hidden underground, and Xiangshan took Gryad's data core. He could have used it to locate their main base. Makes sense. Based on the Z organization's activity map, their stronghold should be somewhere in this region. No wonder he hijacked that ground effect vehicle. It was headed straight in this direction. Plus, he had a badly injured kid with him. He's going to need time to recover. That means he'll be sticking around the stronghold. If I can find that Green Forest base, I might still catch up to him. I can use satellite imagery and historical activity data to narrow down the base's general location. But the exact spot, especially the entrance, will need boots-on-the-ground recon. Meanwhile, Xiangshan had planned to swap out his skull plate. But things didn't go as expected. The circular saw on Little Venom's maintenance rig snapped, and didn't even leave a scratch on his current headplate. Since the skull couldn't be cut, he had to improvise, using micrometal particles, laser heat, and ultrasonic vibration to reshape and seal the fracture into a clean, workable form. How the hell did this thing even crack in the first place? Did someone slam my head into a damn industrial press? No choice now. Gotta print a new skull plate with a hinge. Easy to open, easy to fix. Perfect. That's one handsome, full forehead badass. This head? Certified bald legend. After I'm done, I should slap a layer of silicone over my face. Gives me a more human look, calms the nerve a little, and helps dodge any bounty posters from the authorities. The torso frame's already been printed. Next up, reinforced armor plating and all the minor components that don't need to be ultra-durable. As for my old limbs, time to swap them out with the backups. Later, Xiangshan came over to check on Yuji. The moment he opened the door, the baby burst into loud, terrified wails. "Yuji, what the hell happened here?" "She was fine, master, until you walked in. You scared her half to death. Look at you, shiny, bald, and menacing. Anyone would freak out." Statistically, yes, but it's just a single data point. We can't rule out coincidence. Whatever. How's progress on your end? The add-on car for the mule is almost fully welded. Xiangshan knew. To master physical combat, understanding mechanics was essential. Yuji was still too green to grasp advanced engineering theory, so he taught by doing. Building the cart wasn't as precise as crafting cybernetic limbs, but it was a solid start. For a warrior, spare parts, and even backup bodies were a necessity. A mobile support unit was non-negotiable. "This mod looks decent," Xiangshan commented. "Tires are solid, and you left space for leg units. Not bad. Only problem is it's a little tight. I was planning to haul a 3D printer with us too."